Chapter 10:27. The old man of alchemy glared at Gu and immediately saw the hostility in his eyes. Gu, who did as he pleased, was like a stubborn child. He glared at old man of alchemy, insisting that old man of alchemy give him an answer. The old man of alchemy was stunned. This scene suddenly became very familiar, as if he had experienced it before. For a moment, the old man of alchemy didn't know how to answer. Gu glared at him fiercely, but he didn't hurt the celestial fire Qian cauldron anymore. He pulled the handle of the cauldron and very straightforwardly opened it. For a moment, a strange medicinal fragrance spread out. Everyone nervously gathered around to take a look. They had already wasted 3 dragon pill recovery pills. If they wasted another one, wouldn't that be too depressing? They saw 2 medicinal pills lying quietly in the spacious cauldron. They had a dark color and were round and full. 2. Gu heaved a sigh of relief. This time, everyone's hearts, which had been hanging in the air, finally settled down. They couldn't imagine how disappointed they would be if they spent so much effort only to refine 1 medicinal pills. Although they only got 2 pills, it was better than only 1. At least there was still 1 pill to spare. However, who knew that the old man of alchemy would say, "Wait, old man of alchemy has to check." In other words, they couldn't be sure whether the medicinal pills were refined or not just by looking at them. This time, everyone's hearts were hanging in the air again. Just as the old man of alchemy was about to take out the 2 medicinal pills to check, Gu beat him to it and threw the 2 medicinal pills to Long Fei. Catch. The efficacy of the pills refined by using external forces to supplement the fire is often insufficient. To be cautious, it's better to check them carefully. As the old man of alchemy spoke, he reached out his hand to Long Fei. However, before he could touch Long Fei's hand, he was immediately frightened by his cold gaze and retracted his hand. His little trick could fool the others, but it couldn't fool Gu and Long Fei's eyes. The dragon pill of alchemy was already refined in the cauldron. How could it be insufficient? Otherwise, what was the difference between this celestial fire Qian cauldron and other alchemy furnaces? The old man of alchemy obviously couldn't bear of alchemy and wanted to take 1 dragon pill of alchemy. Medicinal pills of alchemy and alchemy had of alchemy was of alchemy. Of medicinal pills of alchemy. In that case, Long Fei and the others could only keep 1 medicinal pills. Seeing Long Fei's cold face, the old man of alchemy resentfully and unwillingly gave up his last effort. Han Yunxi watched from the side and thought, Gu was indeed the old man of alchemy's disciple. The old man of alchemy couldn't hide anything from his eyes. This crazy jailer had no principles at all. He bullied the weak and feared the strong. He was good at swindling and pretending to be crazy. If it wasn't for Gu's face, not to mention Long Fei, even she wouldn't have been able to take it. No matter what, the dragon pill of alchemy was in their hands this time. Gu Beiwei can finally be saved. Han Yunxi couldn't help but sigh. Obtaining a few dragon pill of alchemy wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Gu Beiwei's shadow technique was about to recover. Could this be considered a New Year's gift to him? If he knew this news, how happy would he be? In her impression, Gu Beiwei had never lost his composure because of happiness or sadness. He was always so gentle and modest, unmoved by honor or disgrace. Here, Long Fei gave the 2 medicinal pills to Han Yunxi for safekeeping. This dragon pill of alchemy could help a martial artist who had lost his or her internal energy recover. The so-called recovery didn't refer to the recovery of internal energy, but the recovery of the dantian. If one wanted to recover their original internal energy, it would depend on the martial artist's own efforts. Of course, once the dantian was recovered, as long as one diligently recuperated, their internal energy would recover very quickly. Although they now had an extra dragon pill of alchemy, Han Yunxi hoped that this dragon pill of alchemy would always be superfluous and would never be needed. One had to know that with their current internal energy, if they needed to use this medicinal pills, it would be a 9 out of 10 chance of survival. After obtaining the dragon pill of alchemy, Han Yunxi and the others naturally had to immediately return to the 3-way black market. They had spent quite a bit of time in the medicine-requesting cave, and adding the time they would need to spend on the way back, they would need at least the middle of December to return to the three-way black market. Based on the current situation on the northernly battlefield, after next spring, Juni Xie and the Northern Dynasty's emperors would enter an all-out confrontation between the two armies. In other words, once they returned to the three-way black market, they had to start dealing with two important matters. The first was to rescue people, and the second was to conquer the north. There wasn't much to prepare for rescuing people. With Bai Yuqiao as their spy, they didn't need to worry too much. It was also because of Bai Yuqiao taking care of everything in Tiger's prison that they hurriedly left Ningjing and Mu Linger there temporarily, lulling Jun Yixie's vigilance. Conquering the north was an extremely important matter. Not only did they need to break in, they also needed to take risks, they also needed to work together, and they also needed to clearly divide the work. First, the three-way battlefield was a natural stronghold at the border of Northern Li, easy to defend and hard to attack. Whether it was the Ning family army or the East Qin army, they had never crossed the three-way battlefield and entered Northern Li's territory. Even if they had the absolute advantage in terms of military strength, even Long Fei didn't dare to let down his guard. Second, the Di clan and East Qin had never deeply cooperated before. If the two armies worked together, they would definitely encounter many problems. Although many people could brainstorm, many people would have mixed feelings and things would easily be delayed. Sometimes, it wouldn't be as efficient as having one person in charge. Thus, whether it was for Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, or for the East Qin army and the Di clan, the northern expedition was an opportunity to break in and also a great challenge. Before the expedition to the north, they had to have a lot of time to make ample preparations. Your Highness, the carriages have already been arranged, Su Donglin said in a low voice. This time, if the matter of the dragon pill and the phoenix power is leaked, this old man will definitely turn your alchemy furnace into a furnace for burning corpses. I will do as I say. Although Gu understood the old man of alchemy very well and knew that he would never leave the medicine-requesting cave, let alone have contact with the outside world, he still left behind these ruthless words. Long Fei did not make a sound. If it wasn't for Gu's face, based on the old man of alchemy's actions regarding the dragon pill, he definitely would have sealed off the medicine-requesting cave. Han Yunxi hesitated a bit before having Su Donglin bring over the remaining snow wine. She said with a smile, "Old man, how about we make a deal?" The old man of alchemy couldn't get the dragon pill, and he couldn't keep Han Yunxi. He had lost both her and his money, so he was disheartened. Hearing Han Yunxi's words, he immediately became spirited. This old man won't do a losing deal. Here, I'll leave the remaining snow wine here, and you can help us refine a few more dragon pill. No matter how many medicinal pills you refine, they will all belong to us. When Han Yunxi said this, the old man of alchemy laughed strangely, especially mockingly. Han Yunxi didn't mind and continued, "As long as you refine a non-poisonous dragon pill, I'll use my phoenix fire to help you nourish the furnace once. What do you think?" The old man of alchemy's strange laughter suddenly became more emphatic. He laughed loudly. "Good. Han Yunxi, you'll do as you say."
I'm not you.
Han Yunxi replied disdainfully. The old man of alchemy didn't blush. He stroked his beard and smoothed his hair, extremely happy. For this kind of strange old man, threatening him to keep a secret was actually reminding him to threaten them with something. It was better to use the carrot and stick, cater to his fancy, and tempt him. With the old man of alchemy's ability, it would take at least a few years for him to refine a non-poisonous dragon pill. By then, they wouldn't be afraid of him leaking any secrets. Long Fei glanced at Han Yunxi and suddenly realized that this woman was actually very suitable for the imperial court. She was quite good at using the carrot and stick tactic. Gu didn't say anything. Although he was confident that the old man of alchemy wouldn't leak the secret, Han Yunxi was right to do this. This way, there would be no mistakes. For a lousy furnace, he won't agree to anything. After saying this, Gu leaped into the big hole in the air and left without looking back. He didn't even give the old man of alchemy a chance to refute him. Han Yunshi and Long Fei didn't stay any longer and were about to leave. However, the old man of alchemy stopped them. He asked Han Yunshi very seriously, "Girl, do you remember what you promised the old man?" Han Yunshi immediately looked towards a hole, only to see that Gu had already disappeared. Only then did she reply, "I remember. I helped you find a disciple, and you gave me the medicine requesting cave." The old man of alchemy suddenly flew into a rage. "Stupid girl, so you still remember. If you didn't break your promise to me first, the old man wouldn't have broken his promise to you. Even if you ask the old man to refine an elixir of immortality, since the old man promised, he would definitely do it." How did I break my promise to you?" Han Yunshi was at a loss. The matter was already over. Why was this crazy old man still acting crazy with her? The old man of alchemy reproached her. "You promised the old man, so you should have taken this matter to heart. It's been so long, but you didn't even send a message to the old man. You clearly didn't take this matter to heart." If Han Yunshi was really looking for someone, even if she wasn't, she would have at least written to him to ask for other clues. However, ever since they made the agreement, Han Yunshi never asked him about this matter again. Han Yunshi finally understood what the old man of alchemy meant by breaking his promise. If the old man of alchemy didn't mention it, she really wouldn't have thought that the real reason the old man of alchemy was fooling her was because of this matter. She really didn't look for anyone because she didn't need to. The person the old man of alchemy was looking for was Gu, who had just left. Han Yunshi originally planned to pretend to be deaf and mute when Gu refused to acknowledge this matter. However, seeing the old man of alchemy so serious, she couldn't help but ask. She asked seriously, "Old Pill Elder, since you wanted to find your disciple so badly that you didn't even hesitate to hand over the medicine requesting cave, why did you let him go in the first place?" Before they arrived, she only knew that Gu had been avoiding this master and didn't want to come back. But after a few days of interaction, anyone with eyes could tell that Gu Qishao held a grudge against his master. What happened between the master and disciple back then? If Han Yunshi's guess was correct, when Gu first came to the alchemy furnace, it should have been during the time when he had just escaped from Gu Yuntian's evil clutches. At that time, Shaoqi was a child who had suffered all kinds of torture and was on the run for his life. As long as someone treated him a little better, he would be deeply grateful. What did the old man of alchemy do to him to make him hate him so much? Why? Han Yunshi asked. Chapter 10:28.
Why?
The old man of alchemy snorted coldly. "None of your business." Han Yunshi had many things to worry about. If it wasn't related to Gu, she wouldn't even ask. This old thing didn't say anything. How was she supposed to help him? Han Yunshi immediately took out the contract that the old man of alchemy had written for her back then and threw it back. She said angrily, "Back to you? Our agreement was 3 years. Within 3 years, I'd help you find your disciple, and you'd hand over everything in the medicine requesting cave to me. First, I didn't take anything from the medicine requesting cave for nothing. Second, our agreement was 3 years. The time isn't up yet. It's too early for you to say that I didn't keep my word and didn't help you find your disciple." The old man of alchemy didn't know how to refute Han Yunshi. Han Yunshi took a step forward, forcing him to retreat. Han Yunshi continued, "You said that you didn't sincerely help you find your disciple, so you didn't keep your word. Regarding your disciple, you didn't answer my questions 3 times. Can I say that you didn't sincerely ask me to find your disciple? You didn't even want to give me the medicine requesting cave, did you? Are you playing with me?" The old man of alchemy stuttered for a long time, but he couldn't come up with a reason. After being yelled at by Han Yunshi, he suddenly felt that Han Yunshi's words made sense. Han Yunshi was fine when she didn't speak, but once she didn't spare anyone. She asked again, "Old Pill Master, you've lived for so long. Do you know what it means to be open and above board? If you're unhappy that I didn't keep my word, just say it. Why do you keep playing with us? Haha, I'm already giving you face by saying that you didn't keep your word. Since you don't want face, I'll say it now. This isn't called not keeping your word. This is called despicable. The old man of alchemy tugged at the contract and was stunned by Han Yunxi's scolding. He couldn't find any words to refute for a long time. Han Yunxi saw that he didn't say anything, so she simply pushed the matter aside. She said, "I'll return the contract to you. I'm not interested in your medicine-requesting cave, and I'm not in a hurry to find you a disciple. This matter is settled between us." After Han Yunxi finished speaking, she held Long Fei's hand and turned around to leave. The old man of alchemy stared at them blankly, as if he had something to say. Han Yunxi walked very slowly. She even deliberately stopped for a moment, but the old man of alchemy refused to speak. Soon, Long Fei brought Han Yunxi to the big hole in the cliff. She really had the urge to rush down and scold the old man of alchemy again. "Let's go," Long Fei urged. "Just take it that I'm asking on behalf of Gu," Han Yunxi whispered. However, just as she was about to turn around, the old man of alchemy said, "Girl, I'll tell you the truth, and you'll continue to help me find a disciple."
How about that?
"As long as you help me find a disciple, I'll even give you this alchemy furnace, let alone the dragon pill." Han Yunxi was overjoyed and immediately jumped down. "Deal." The old man of alchemy then told her about what happened years ago. Back then, he met Little Madman by chance and realized that Little Madman was very similar to himself. Not only was Little Madman a pharmaceutical genius, but his temperament and character were also very similar. He loved Little Madman like his own grandson and planned to let Little Madman inherit his legacy in the future. However, one day, Little Madman accidentally kicked the alchemy furnace. He hit Little Madman and forced Little Madman to kowtow and apologize to the alchemy furnace. He also said that if Little Madman dared to hurt the alchemy furnace again, he would drive him away. Although the old man of alchemy was old, he was crazy and carefree like an old urchin. However, when he talked about the past, he was like a lonely and pitiful old man who had no one to take care of him. At that time, he only kowtowed once, and his forehead was broken. Blood flowed all over his face. The blood seemed to float into his eyes. When he looked at the old man, his eyes were all red. The old man of alchemy's eyes were red. Scenes of the master and disciple in the past appeared in his mind again. That day, Little Madman grabbed his hand and said, "Old Madman, I don't want to be your disciple." He chuckled and asked, "Who allowed you to call me Old Madman? How about I call you Grandpa?" Little Madman asked very sincerely. That day, he made a very bitter medicinal pills for Little Madman. He coaxed him, "Little Madman, be good and take this medicine. You'll grow up soon." "Master, I don't want to grow up so quickly," Little Madman said very seriously. He asked, "Why?" Little Madman replied, "When I grow up, Master will die of old age, and I will have no family." That day, Little Madman didn't know why, but he suddenly ran over to ask him, "Master, will you throw me into the alchemy furnace to make pills?" He laughed and replied, "Master can't bear to do that." Little Madman immediately burrowed into his arms and hugged him for a long time before letting go. Hearing this, Long Fei's face turned cold, but Han Yunxi frowned. She finally knew why Gu still didn't recognize him as his master and didn't come back. For an ordinary child, no matter how severe a beating or scolding was, it could be forgiven. However, for Xiaoqi, the old man of alchemy's scolding was enough to make him despair. Not for anything else, but because the old man of alchemy gave him hope, but destroyed it with his own hands. "Old Man Dan, do you know that the little madman you met was Xiaoqi Gu, who was used by his father for medical experiments? He was used again and again, and was finally expelled from Medical City like a rat." Han Yunxi said this sentence in her heart. She finally knew why Gu hated the alchemy furnace so much, and why he used the alchemy furnace to threaten the old man of alchemy as soon as he entered the alchemy cave. Now, she also found the alchemy furnace to be an eyesore. Coldly, she said, "Don't look for a disciple. Isn't it good to guard your precious furnace for the rest of your life?" The old man of alchemy was anxious. With Han Yunxi and Long Fei's current power, if they really wanted to find someone, they would definitely have a clue. If they couldn't find little madman, who else in this world could help him? He didn't want to lose this opportunity, so he quickly explained. After the old man picked him up, he never yelled at him, not even once. It was just that one time, just that one time. That time, the old man took medicinal pills and couldn't control his temper. The old man regretted it. You took medicinal pills? Han Yunshi didn't understand. The old man took the fire pill that day, so he was upset and couldn't control his temper. Otherwise, this old man's heart would ache for the furnace, but I wouldn't chase the little lunatic away. Pill furnace master, hurriedly explained. Han Yunshi was shocked. This matter. Did Gu know? Girl, this time, the dragon pill incident was the old man's fault. Can the old man apologize to you? You have to help the old man with this matter. The old man is also someone who has one foot in the grave. No matter how many mistakes the old man has made in his life, he can't let down a child. This is the old man's only wish. The old man must make it clear to him. Han Yunshi's heart felt stifled. She unconsciously looked at the cave in the cliff and said, Old Dan, the child from that year has already grown up. He's no longer the little madman from that year. I don't know if I can help you find him. The old man of alchemy didn't understand, so he immediately described the little madman's appearance, temper, and talent in medicine. Okay, I'll help you find him. Han Yunshi said lightly. Han Yunshi and Long Fei flew to the mouth of the cave and continued onwards without stopping. They got on the carriage and were about to leave when the shadow guard, who had been guarding the cave entrance, hurriedly reported, Your Highness, young Master Gu hasn't come out yet. Su Donglin and Bailey Mingxiang were puzzled. Wasn't Gu the first to come out? Han Yunshi wasn't surprised. She already knew that Gu hadn't left and was hiding. Otherwise, why would she try so hard to interrogate the old man of alchemy? Uncle Gao, wait outside the medicinal hut. Long Fei Yi said lightly. At this moment, Gu was hiding at the cave entrance, quietly looking at the old man of alchemy who was standing in a daze by the heavenly fire furnace. He hadn't left and had been hiding nearby. He had heard every word that Poison Lass and Crazy Ol had said. He stared blankly at the old madman and stood motionless for a long time. It wasn't until the little medicine boy pushed him from behind that he came back to his senses. The little medicine boy was about to call out to the old man of alchemy when Gu hurriedly covered his mouth and warned fiercely, Sure, if you don't listen, I'll poison you mute. The little medicine boy was frightened and didn't dare to make a sound. Gu took out a copper coin tied with a red string from his collar and stuffed it into the little medicine boy's hand. He whispered, Give it to your master and tell him. The little medicine boy waited for a long time, but Gu didn't continue. He looked up timidly, only to see that the big brother in red had no expression on his peerlessly beautiful face. Tell him what? The little medicine boy asked timidly. Gu's voice was choked with emotion. He said, Tell your master that little madman has grown up and don't look for him anymore. Let him take in a new disciple. After Gu finished speaking, he immediately left, leaving the little medicine boy confused. The little medicine boy didn't dare to delay and quickly sneaked into the secret passage and slid all the way to the bottom of the alchemy cave. Master, that big brother in red asked me to give you this. The little medicine boy held the copper coin and raised his hands high. The old man of alchemy was immersed in his own thoughts and didn't pay attention to him. Regarding Gu, other than his beautiful eyes, he didn't have a good impression of Gu. Master, that big brother in red asked me to pass on a message. When the little medicine boy said this, the old man of alchemy looked down and saw the copper coin in the little medicine boy's hand. He was immediately stunned. This copper coin was different from the others. This copper coin had a very obvious flame on it. He had personally burned it for little madman. The old man of alchemy grabbed the copper coin and asked in surprise, This? Who gave this to you? That big brother in red, the very beautiful one. The little medicine boy replied, Gu. How could Gu have this copper coin? How could it be? Thinking of Gu's beautiful peach blossom eyes again, the old man of alchemy was so shocked that his heart trembled. Without saying a word, He chased after them. He hadn't left the medicine hut for more than 10 years. In one breath, he chased out of the medicine hut. Unfortunately, Han Yunxi's carriage had disappeared. The old man of alchemy hurriedly turned back and asked the little medicine boy, "What else did he say?" The little medicine boy had never seen his master so excited and nervous. He conveyed Gu's words word for word. He said that little madman has grown up and asked you to stop looking for him. He also asked you to take in a new disciple. The old man of alchemy held the copper coin tightly and murmured excitedly, "It's him, it's him. It's actually him." Chapter 10:29. The old man of alchemy recalled Gu's every move after he entered the medicine-requesting cave. Only then did he realize how stupid he was. Little madman was right in front of him, but he didn't recognize him. The little lunatic knew everything about the medicine-requesting cave, knew everything about the pill-refining cave, and even knew what he was thinking. He didn't recognize him. The old man of alchemy smiled bitterly. Then, he recalled Han Yunxi's aggressive questioning. He hurriedly asked the little medicine boy, "When did Gu give you this copper coin?"
Just now.
"I thought they had all left." "Gu, he was hiding up there and secretly watching you," the little medicine boy answered timidly. The old man of alchemy smiled, even more helplessly. "So that's how it is. So that's how it is." Gu Qixiao hadn't left, so he'd heard everything he and Han Yunxi had said. The old man of alchemy smiled bitterly until tears almost fell from his eyes. Soon he realized a problem. He exclaimed, He's Xiao Qi from Medical City." Although the old man of alchemy didn't care about worldly affairs, ever since Long Fei Yi asked him about the dragon pill, he had been in contact with Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. He more or less paid attention to the happenings in Medical City and Medical City. The fact that Gu Yuntian, the dean of the medical college, used his illegitimate son to test medicine was a big deal in the medical world.
Of course, he knew about it.
However, how could he have known that the pharmaceutical genius he picked up from the medicine field back then was Xiao Qi, who had escaped from Medical City? He recalled the first time he met Xiao Qi's miserable appearance. He recalled the longing in Xiao Qi's eyes when he said he didn't want to grow up. He recalled the disappointment on Xiao Qi's face when his head was bleeding. Tears flowed down the old man of alchemy's eyes. He tried to wipe them away, but the more he wiped, the more tears flowed down. In the end, tears flowed down his cheeks. He finally realized that he had missed such a good disciple. After he finished refining the dragon pill, would Xiao Qi still come to collect the medicinal pills? The old man of alchemy hung the flame copper coin in front of his chest and shouted, "Pass down my order. Close the cave." The old man is going into seclusion to refine pills. He would wait. He was waiting for the little madman to return. He wanted to tell the little madman that he would only accept one disciple in this lifetime. He wanted to tell little madman that in his master's eyes, little madman would always be a child and would never grow up. The old man of alchemy had already given the order to close the medicine-requesting cave. However, Gu was still galloping on his horse, afraid that he would be caught. His speed was shockingly fast. In the end, the Long Fei Yi had to personally drive the carriage to catch up. "Gu, you've been running for a whole day. There's a tea house up ahead. Go in and rest. We'll continue tomorrow," the Long Fei Yi shouted. Gu did not react at all. He continued to run forward as if he was running for his life. Han Yunxi poked her head out of the carriage and asked, "He couldn't have done something to the old man of alchemy, right?" The Long Fei Yi replied with 3 words, "Only God knows." "Gu, did you hear me?" the Long Fei Yi shouted again. Gu still did not answer. In the end, the Long Fei Yi lashed out with his whip and broke Gu's horse's leg. The horse lost its footing and could not stop in time. Gu was suddenly in the air. Only then did he look back and say angrily, "Long Fei Yi, what are you doing?" "I told you to stop. Didn't you hear me?" the Long Fei Yi asked. God knows what Gu was doing in the medicine-requesting cave. At least based on his current condition, he was fine. Gu's acting skills were top-notch. Even if Han Yunxi and the Long Fei Yi knew about him and the old man of alchemy, he could still pretend that nothing had happened. When the Long Fei Ye's carriage stopped in front of him, he said to the Long Fei Ye, "The wind was too strong. I didn't hear what you said clearly." Han Yunxi hid in the carriage and almost laughed out loud. She knew that Gu was fine. The Long Fei Yi lashed out with his whip and drove the carriage over. Gu hurriedly dodged, and the Long Fei Yi drove the carriage away. Su Donglin drove another carriage and followed closely behind. Gu hurriedly chased after him. "Hey, wait for me. I don't have a horse." That night, they stayed at a tea house. The Long Fei Yi ordered that Su Donglin should rest while Gu stayed to keep watch. When the Long Fei Yi was about to enter, Gu muttered, using public office to avenge a private grudge. The Long Fei Yi replied casually, "You can't sleep anyway." Her few words left Gu Qishao speechless. That night, Gu really couldn't sleep. He sat outside Long Fei Ye's large courtyard entrance for the entire night. The next day, he couldn't muster up the energy to ride a horse. He obediently nestled in Su Donglin's carriage and slept for the entire day. Just like that, Han Yunxi and the others headed north, hurrying towards the three-way black market. Along the way, no one mentioned the old man of alchemy again. On the 15th day of the 12th month, they finally arrived at the three-way black market. There was still about half a month before New Year's Eve. Everyone was rushing home to celebrate the new year, so the three-way black market was especially deserted. Han Yunxi and the others arrived at the back door of East Origin Palace. As soon as they alighted from the carriage, they saw Gu Beiwe standing at the entrance, waiting for them. His white robes were even more flawless than the snow outside, untainted by a speck of dust. He was alone and lonely, but the warmth and indifference in his eyes didn't let others see that he was lonely. He was as gentle as jade, and his smile was as gentle as the wind. Let alone the fact that it was the 12th month of winter outside, a world of ice and snow. Even the spring breeze could not compare to the faint smile on his lips. "North Moon, have you been well recently?" Han Yunxi said nothing. She smiled at Gu Beiwe. Long Fei Yi was even more speechless. However, as soon as he saw Gu Beiwe, he nodded towards him. This was out of courtesy. Gu wrapped his arm around Gu Beiwe's shoulder casually and walked inside. "Brother, we've brought you something good. Let's go." Gu Beiwe was waiting for them, as well as for the dragon pill. However, even though Gu had said that, he still asked seriously, "Everyone, did your trip go smoothly?" Before Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi could say anything, Gu said with a chuckle, "With your Western Qin princess around, there's only good things. Nothing goes wrong." Gu Beiwe looked back at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi said with a chuckle, "Refining pills takes a lot of time. I have to convert my energy into fire. I accidentally activated the power of the phoenix in my body. Once I control the power of the phoenix, I'll be a master like you." The power of the phoenix? Gu Beiwe was very surprised. He had never heard of this power before. It's the power hidden in the phoenix birthmark. It's passed down from generation to generation like the poison storage space. I discovered it. Han Yunxi remained happy the entire time. "I can't use much right now. I still need to train hard." Gu Beiwe looked at Long Fei Yi again. Long Fei Yi was as expressionless as usual, his eyes cold and clear. Seeing that Long Fei Yi didn't say anything, Gu Beiwe believed her. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, princess." This subordinate always felt that the phoenix birthmark was mysterious. "I didn't expect it to be this powerful. Princess, you'll have to work hard for a year or two. Congratulate me after I've mastered it," Han Yunxi said seriously. With their masters acting this way, Su Donglin and Bailey Mingxiang naturally didn't dare to say anything. The three of them went through many twists and turns in medicine requesting cave, narrowly escaping death twice. It was as if the pain they suffered never happened. No one mentioned it. For Gu Beiwe, it was worth it. Back in the house, Han Yunxi hurriedly took out the dragon pill and handed it to Gu Beiwe with both hands. Gu Beiwe was terrified. He quickly bowed to receive it. "Many thanks, princess." He still wanted to thank Long Fei Yi and Gu. Long Fei Yi didn't say anything. Gu personally brought the water over. What are you wasting words for? Quickly take it. Let us see your shadow technique. Only at this time did Gu Beiyue's calm heart begin to stir. He held the dragon pill and couldn't help looking at Long Feiyi. When did he think that his legs would be crippled and he would lose all his martial arts? When he was in his most difficult situation, he fell into Long Feiyi's hands. He thought that he would lose his life. But who would have thought that not only would Long Feiyi accompany the princess to ask for medicine, he would also help the princess and Gu bring back the dragon pill. He was the East Qin crown prince. Gu Beiyue placed the dragon pill in his mouth. He raised the cup of water with one hand and slowly drank it. His other hand's index and middle finger gently bent down on the table, replacing his knees with 2 fingers as he bowed to Long Feiyi. From this moment on, his shadow technique would return. From this moment on, there would no longer be any Eastern or Western Qin in his heart. From this moment on, he began to hope that this man in front of him could flatten Northern Li, sweep away Tian and unify Tianning South and rule the world. Long Feiyi naturally noticed the movements of Gu Beiyue's hands. When Gu Beiyue put down the cup of water, he slightly raised his hand on the armrest. This was a gesture to dispense with formalities. This represented that Long Feiyi had accepted Gu Beiyue's allegiance and accepted Gu Beiyue's expectations. Their movements were seen by Han Yunxi, but she didn't participate. She felt that this was a man's etiquette. In her eyes, Gu Beiyue would always be her friend. She hoped that after the chaos in Cloud Realm ended, Gu Beiyue would be able to live closer to them. Like this, when she was free, she could go to his quiet garden to drink tea and chat. At his place, she would always be able to relax. Gu didn't notice anything. He was most concerned about the effects of the medicine. How is it? He anxiously asked. Gu Beiyue only felt his dantian warm up after the dragon pill entered his stomach. Gradually, a warm current gathered into qi that made him feel very comfortable. He quickly sat down cross-legged on the warm couch on the side and began to circulate his energy. Seeing this, Long Feiyi immediately went over to help. With the help of the dragon pill and Long Feiyi's profound internal energy, Gu Beiyue could clearly feel his dantian recovering. Sure enough, in less than 2 hours, Gu Beiyue was able to circulate his energy normally. Originally, because of the medicinal pills that Elder Kenzo had given him, he already had 20 to 30% of his internal energy left. Therefore, his recovery speed was extremely fast. Although there were still many things for Long Feiyi to do, Long Feiyi didn't go anywhere in the following 2 days. He stayed in Gu Beiyue's room to help him recover. Just like this, including the first day, Gu Beiyue used 3 days to recover all of his internal energy. As soon as he got off the couch, he saw Han Yunxi and Gu coming over. "How's your recovery?" Gu asked with a smile. Han Yunxi didn't say anything, but she was filled with anticipation. Gu Beiyue smiled. It was rare for him to smile so happily. His figure flashed and disappeared in an instant. So fast. Gu chased after him. Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi also chased after him. They saw Gu Beiyue standing in the courtyard with his head lowered and looking at his legs. "Gu Beiyue, you've recovered. You've really recovered." Han Yunxi exclaimed loudly. TSK, Long Feiyi, aren't you afraid that one day Gu Beiyue will kidnap Poison Lass and you won't be able to catch up? Gu teased. Chapter 1030. Gu's joke was especially loud. No one knew if it was unintentional or intentional, but not only did Long Feiyi, who was standing beside him, hear it. Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue heard it clearly as well. The originally joyous atmosphere suddenly cooled down. The large courtyard became especially quiet, making everyone present feel uncomfortable. To put it lightly, Gu was provoking Long Feiyi. To put it bluntly, Gu was provoking the trust between Long Feiyi and Gu Beiyue. After all, Gu Beiyue was from Western Qin. Everyone subconsciously looked at Long Feiyi, only to see that his expression was still cold and unreadable. Han Yunxi wished she could send Gu Qishao flying with a kick. She didn't want him to lose his life after Long Fei's kick. However, Gu Beiyue laughed heartily and broke the silence. He said jokingly, "Your Highness, if that's the case, you have to be careful." Everyone was surprised. They thought that Gu Beiwa would be anxious to explain, but who knew that he would go along with Gu's words and openly joke back. Bailey Mingxiang kept looking at Gu Beiwa. She didn't see any guilt in him, only his natural and unrestrained manner. Bailey Mingxiang understood many things about Dr. Gu, but the only thing she didn't understand was his calmness. This calmness couldn't be faked. It came from the heart. She really wanted to ask Dr. Gu how he did it. How could he like his master without feeling inferior? How could he have a crush on her for so many years without feeling guilty? How could he face this kind of joke calmly and treat it as a joke? In the silence, Gu Beiwa also laughed freely. Long Fei didn't mind his joke, but said coldly to Gu Qishao, "If they try to escape, this crown prince will break your dog legs." As soon as he said that, Han Yunxi immediately laughed out loud. And when Han Yunxi laughed, the awkward atmosphere was immediately broken. Su Donglin, Bailey Mingxiang, and the other servants also laughed. Gu was the only one who didn't laugh. The corners of his mouth twitched. It was clearly a joke that he had made, but in the end, he had become a laughingstock.
Why?
What about it? Jokes aside, Gu Beiwa used his qinggong in the courtyard. To be precise, it was the shadow technique. His speed was so fast that no one could see his footwork. It could be considered as an instantaneous shift. He was clearly in front of everyone, but he disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already on the roof. He had walked through the entire courtyard and was finally certain that he had recovered. He landed in front of Han Yunxi and the others. He bowed to Han Yunxi, Long Feiyi, and Gu one by one. He was so serious that no one could refuse him. Han Yunxi and the others generously accepted his thanks, but they didn't say a word about the dangers of the medicine-requesting cave. Gu Beiwa stood up and suddenly remembered something. He quickly asked in a low voice, "Your Highness, did the dual cultivation go smoothly?"
3 months should have passed by now.
Long Fei nodded and softly said, "It's already over. Tonight, the two of us will be in closed-door cultivation alone for a night." Before Long Fei Yi could finish, Gu Beiwa said, "Your Highness can be assured. This one will protect the princess well." The dual cultivation was very important, and the solo cultivation after the dual cultivation was even more important. Although it was only one night, it was the most important night that determined success or failure. After the dual cultivation, Long Fei Yi smoothly advanced to the 3rd level of the lust bite energy. During this night, Long Fei Yi was going to combine his lust bite energy with his original Nirvana heart arts to create a brand new and incomparably powerful internal energy. There were many different martial arts in the world with different styles and styles. A martial artist could simultaneously master different martial arts, but only cultivate one type of internal energy. The lust bite power was a special case. The lust bite power was a kind of dual cultivation internal cultivation method. Dual cultivation had 2 meanings. One was that a martial artist could cultivate 2 types of internal energy at the same time. 2 was that to advance to the 3rd level of the lust bite energy, one had to cultivate both the heart and body through the pair of lovers. Now that Long Fei Yi had cultivated to the final step, the lust bite energy wasn't his final goal. His final goal was to combine the lust bite and Nirvana heart arts into a new strength. That would be the strongest internal energy in Cloud Realm Continent's martial arts world. As for Han Yunxi, her dual cultivation assistant, her current internal energy was the Nirvana heart arts, which had already reached the maximum level. Although very few people knew that Han Yunxi knew martial arts, Han Yunxi was an unmistakable expert. She was about the same level as Long Fei Yi 2 years ago. If she went up Celestial Mountain now, the number of people who could spar with her could be counted on one hand. Tonight's solo cultivation was very important for Han Yunxi, for no other reason than the fact that she had Phoenix energy. Lust bite energy was an internal energy cultivated through cultivation, but Phoenix energy was a mysterious force. It lay dormant in Han Yunxi's body and was constant. It wouldn't increase with the increase of Han Yunxi's internal energy, but as Han Yunxi's internal energy increased, her control over it would increase as well. She needed to take advantage of the moment right after the dual cultivation to see how much phoenix energy she could control. Long Fei Yi had to experience the pain of cultivation, while Han Yunxi had to experience the sin of nirvana. Neither of them was luckier than the other, but neither had it been easier. Their strength was obtained through their own endurance and hard work. Tonight was a crucial night. No matter who it was, the consequences would be unthinkable if they were disturbed. For the sake of caution, Long Fei Yi waited until Gu Beiwei recovered before beginning his solo cultivation. Long Fei Yi, this old man will protect you tonight. Gu's tone was really big this time. Everyone looked down on him, but Long Fei Yi actually nodded. Gu was grinning cockily when Long Fei Yi said, "Go squat at the gates." Who was squatting at the gates to guard them? Everyone was silent at first, but in the end, they couldn't help but laugh. As expected, Long Fei Yi didn't use any vulgarities when cursing. Su Donglin silently memorized the entire exchange. While he was secretly recording Yi Shi's sayings, he had also secretly recorded every single word his master had said about killing Gu Qishao. He'd even given the book a very pleasant-sounding name, A Fool's Talk. After the curtain of the sky fell, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi went into seclusion in 2 adjacent rooms and began their solo cultivation. Gu Beiwei brewed tea at the tea table in the courtyard. He seemed to be leisurely, but he was paying attention to every movement in his surroundings. Gu pretended not to squat at the gates. He sat on the steps in front of Han Yunxi's door, seemingly flipping through the poison scripture. In reality, he was also paying attention to his surroundings just like Gu Beiwei. When it was time to be serious, Gu would never be careless. Even though their whereabouts were a mystery, and even the people of Myriad Merchant Hall didn't know they had returned. However, for safety's sake, the entire East Origin Hall was heavily guarded. They didn't sleep or speak for the entire night, all the way until dawn. Only then did Gu stand up and stretch his legs, walking towards Gu Beiwei. He whispered, "It's about time, right?" At this point, it should be considered smooth. There were no external disturbances, and Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were very quiet. There were no major problems. Gu Beiwei poured a cup of tea for Gu to wake him up. Gu sat down across from him. Since he had nothing to do, he said, "Let's make a bet." "Bet on what?" Gu Beiwei was interested. "Bet on who comes out first,"
Gu said.
He really had nothing to do, and he couldn't sleep. "If you lose, help me put in more good words in the future. Don't always side with Long Fei Yi." Gu Beiwei chuckled and asked, "And if I win?" "You can name your terms." Gu was very straightforward. "If I win, you'll have to watch that mouth of yours." Gu Beiwei was very serious. "You'll fall for it sooner or later." Gu rolled his eyes at him. He couldn't be bothered to bet with him. At this moment, the door to the room on the right opened. Han Yunxi was the first to come out. Gu Beiwei and Gu Qishao were both pleasantly surprised as they rushed over. "Princess, did it go smoothly? Poison girl, how is it?" Han Yunxi didn't have the smile they were expecting. Instead, there was only confusion on her face. She didn't answer them. Instead, she looked towards the closed door next door and asked, "Long Fei Yi hasn't come out yet, right?" "Not yet." Gu Beiwei asked seriously. "Princess, did it not go smoothly?" Gu Beiwei's anxiousness was written in his eyes. Gu's anxiousness was written all over his face. "Poison girl, what happened? Hurry up and tell me." They had been dual cultivating every night for 3 months. In order to maintain it, they had sacrificed a lot in Medicine Requesting Cave. After 3 months, it should have been smooth sailing. Gu was not only anxious, but also a little unwilling. "I can't control much of the Phoenix power. I keep feeling that something is wrong." But Han Yunxi was just speaking when Long Fei Yi suddenly opened the door. The moment he walked out, everyone saw that something was wrong with his expression. "What's wrong?" Han Yunxi was very uneasy. The lustbite power and Nirvana's inner energy can't fuse. Long Fei Yi's brows were tightly knitted. Although this last step was crucial, it wasn't difficult for him. He was originally full of anticipation, but he never thought that at the end of dual cultivation, there would be a problem in the final stage of dual cultivation. And such a big problem at that. The lust-bite power and Nirvana's inner energy couldn't fuse. This meant that he had advanced to the third stage of the lust-bite power without having a big breakthrough. In a sense, his advancement was unsuccessful. Before dawn, Long Fei Yi had finished his dual cultivation. He sat alone in the room and pondered for a long time. He only came out when he heard the commotion outside. How could this be? Han Yunxi couldn't understand either. She said, Long Fei Yi, I can only control 30% of the wind power. According to what Elder Kenzo said before, if their dual cultivation succeeded, her inner energy would increase greatly. She could basically control the phoenix power. If not 70 to 80%, at least 50 to 60%. No matter what, it shouldn't be only 30%. Princess, can you let me take your pulse? Gu Beiwa asked. Han Yunxi immediately raised her hand. After Gu Beiwa took her pulse, Long Fei Yi also raised his hand. Both of your pulses are normal, and your qi is strong. Fortunately, your bodies aren't too big, and there are no signs of cultivation deviation. Gu Beiwa said, seriously. Gu Beiwa was indeed a doctor. He first confirmed that Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi's bodies were fine, and that they weren't tired by the two forces. Only then did he feel at ease. As for whether the dual cultivation would succeed or not, this wasn't his strong point. He didn't know anything about the phoenix power. That's strange. If the dual cultivation didn't succeed, the two of you shouldn't have been so successful last night, right? Gu was also curious. When it came to closed-door cultivation, one would either succeed or fail. The consequences were serious. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi's situation didn't occur. What was going on? Chapter 1031. Long Fei Yi understood the lust-bite power too well, but he still couldn't figure out why it was like this. In the end, he could only attribute it to Han Yunxi's phoenix power. The phoenix power was obtained by accident. He and Han Yunxi didn't know anything about it. Although the phoenix power appeared in the later stages of their dual cultivation, it still had some effect during their dual cultivation. Could it be because of the phoenix power? Han Yunxi also thought of this point. They couldn't find any problems with the cultivation of the lust-bite power and nirvana power. The only thing they suspected was the phoenix power. They were originally glad that they obtained this mysterious power during their trip to the medicine-requesting cave. But now, they couldn't determine whether it was a blessing or a curse. Gu Beiwa and Gu both agreed with Long Fei Yi's suspicions. They knew nothing about the phoenix power. The old man of alchemy had already told them everything he knew. Now, they could only seek help from the old man in Kenzo. If it was in the past, Long Fei Yi would have sent people to inquire about the situation while seeking help from the old man in Kenzo. However, at this juncture, he didn't dare to act rashly. After all, there weren't many people who knew that he and Han Yunxi were dual cultivating. If he inquired about it elsewhere and the news was leaked, the losses would outweigh the gains. It's fortunate that he didn't go berserk. Gu looked faintly at Han Yunxi and muttered, "We still can't be careless. Your Highness, we still have to inform Senior Kenshin about this." Gu Beiwa said seriously. Long Fei Yi wrote another letter to the old man in Kenzo, explaining their situation. This time, the old man in Kenzo replied very quickly. Like Long Fei Yi, the old man in Kenzo also suspected that the problem was with the phoenix power. He even specially instructed that although it didn't cause too much damage, they should go up the mountain as soon as the snow on the mountain melted. The three venerables personally checked his pulse and discussed the cause together. Long Fei Yi had just told the old man Kenzo what he wanted when an anxious voice came from outside the door. "What about Tiger's prison? Are you still going to save them?" She saw Tang Li, who had not been seen for a long time, rushing in from the door. After not seeing him for a few months, he was not only thin but also haggard. The Tang sect had several batches of weapons that needed to be sharpened. As the sect master, he had to personally go back and preside over the sharpening ceremony. After the meeting, Mrs. Tang forced him to stay for a few days. When Mrs. Tang learned that Ning Jing was pregnant, her heart was all on Tang Li's side. She wanted to follow Tang Li to the three-way black market to save people. Fortunately, Tang Zijin stopped her. As soon as Tang Li heard that Long Fei Yi and the others had returned in advance, he immediately rushed back. As soon as he arrived, he bumped into them talking about Tianshan. Even if we're going back to Tianshan, we must save them first before going back, Han Yunqi said seriously. No way. Gu Beiwei was the first to object. This matter could not be taken lightly or impulsively. Princess, the expedition to the north is a big matter. It's not a game. Save them first, then go to Tianshan. Leave the northern expedition to the soldiers, Gu Qishao interrupted impatiently. He did not understand the world's affairs, nor did he care about them. He only knew that if he did not understand the matter of dual cultivation and the power of the phoenix, there would always be danger lurking around Poison Lass. In his view, Poison Lass's safety was the most important thing. That's right, that's right. Save them first, it's important. For the first time, Tang Li agreed with Gu's words. Tang Li was the same as Gu. He did not understand the world's affairs, nor did he care about them. In his view, Ning Jing and the child's safety was everything. He looked towards Long Fei with pleading eyes. Big bro, let's save them first. Save them first, then arrange for the expedition to the north. After the snow melts, you and sister-in-law can go to Tianshan. As for the expedition to the north, as long as you arrange it well, there won't be any problems. After Tang Li finished speaking, he continued to stare into Long Fei Ye's eyes. It was just like when he begged this brother of his when he was young. He would look at him so pitifully that his heart would soften. He knew that if they were worried and insisted on going to the expedition personally, the rescue mission would be delayed until they returned from Tianshan. Once the civil war in Northern Li entered a stalemate, there would not be much difference between the expedition to the north in the spring and summer. Brother and sister-in-law could go to Tianshan first, then come back to save them and go to the north. Brother, Ning Jing is about to give birth. Tang Li begged. We agreed that you would go and save them once you came back. These days, if not for Ning Jing's letter forcing him to calm down, he would have gone to Tiger's prison by himself. As a husband, how could he allow his wife to be in danger when she was pregnant? Long Fei Yi looked at his haggard brother and did not say anything for a long time. There should be no change in the plan for this matter. He had too many things to consider. Sect Master Tang, this is the first time that Eastern and Western Qin have cooperated, and it is also the beginning of breaking the ice. His Highness and the princess must go to the expedition personally. Otherwise, there will be internal strife between the two armies before they reach Northern Li, Gu Beiwei said with a serious expression. The problem he mentioned was also the biggest and most troublesome problem that the expedition to the north would face. When the cooperation was first finalized, the D clan was fighting for power. Once they started to talk about the alliance, the D clan's military would definitely have more demands. The Bailey army was also not easy to deal with. Even the armies of the Commander-in-Chief's office in the south were not easy to deal with. Both sides wanted to fight for power and achievements to pave the way for the future. That's enough. Let's not go north for now. Let's save the hostages first and hold back the troops. Gu came up with yet another rotten idea. Tang Li immediately nodded furiously in agreement. Finally, Long Fei Yi opened his mouth. Coldly, he said, absolutely not. The reason they hadn't rescued the hostages was because they didn't want to alert the enemy. Once they rescued the hostages, Bai Yuqiao's spy would be exposed. Ning Cheng's plan would also be exposed. Currently, the situation in Northern Li was more or less settled. Jun Yixia and the Northern Dynasty's emperors had both suffered disastrous losses and were about to enter a stalemate. With the combined forces of the D clan and East Qin, it was more than enough to deal with Jun Yixia. Thus, Ning Cheng's plan being exposed or not didn't affect the overall situation at all. Even so, they couldn't abandon the D clan after rescuing the hostages. Once Jun Ixia found out that he'd been tricked, his personality would likely throw caution to the wind and send his troops south to attack Tianning. The Northern Dynasty's emperors would be most happy to see Jun Ixia head south. He wouldn't chase after him because he didn't have enough troops left to do so. In other words, once Jun Ixia headed south, Tianning would be the first to bear the brunt of his attack. If they didn't join forces with the East Qin army, the D clan's current strength would be insufficient to deal with Jun Ixia. In any case, if they wanted to rescue the hostages, they had to make preparations for a northern expedition. Once they rescued the hostages, they would immediately go north and attack when the enemy was unprepared. This was their best and only choice. Otherwise, Ningcheng and the D clan would be in grave danger. After Long Fei Ye's explanation, Tang Li immediately said, "Big bro, how about this? Let's rescue the hostages first, then transfer our troops over to defend the three-way battlefield with the D clan. We won't go north and just wait for Jun Ixia to head south. This way, Tianning wouldn't be in any danger." Long Fei asked coldly, "Then what about Ningcheng?" Long Fei might have personal grudges with Ningcheng, and he might have always hated Ningcheng for being disrespectful to Han Yunqi, but he definitely wouldn't go back on his word when it came to breaking the ice between the two factions. He definitely wouldn't use this opportunity to sacrifice Ningcheng. Long Fei had done plenty of such things in the past. Moreover, he'd done it beautifully, watertight, and intimidating. But this time, no matter how much enmity and dissatisfaction he felt towards Ningcheng, he knew to endure. When it came to matters of state and the world, he focused on the matter, not the person. This was the first time Long Fei had spoken the words Ningcheng in such a calm voice, but it shocked everyone present. Han Yunqi stared at Long Fei in shock. She could see through the entire situation, but the only thing she couldn't see was Long Fei's true attitude towards Ningcheng and the D clan. Now she understood. In addition to her love for her husband, she also had a sense of respect for him. Once Jun Ixia found out that he'd been tricked by Ningcheng, Jun Ixia's personality would make Ningcheng's life a living hell. Ningcheng had been traveling with Jun Ixia's army all this time. After being kidnapped, he hadn't returned to the D clan. This situation couldn't be more obvious. This meant that Jun Ixia didn't completely trust Ningcheng. Ningcheng was Jun Ixia's biggest hostage. How could Jun Ixia not be angry and kill the hostage? In a sense, Ningcheng had single-handedly facilitated the cooperation between the Eastern and Western Qin. The first joint battle between the Eastern and Western Qin was an opportunity for Ningcheng to gain Jun Ixia's trust by hiding by his side. Ningcheng had racked his brains to plan for Jun Ixia to go north and start a war with the Northern Dynasty's emperors so quickly. Ningcheng must have been looking forward to their northern expedition more than anyone else. He could sacrifice himself for their northern expedition, but they definitely couldn't sacrifice him and stop their northern expedition. Moreover, once Jun Ixia killed the hostage, would the D clan's army, the Chamber of Commerce, and myriad merchant hall fall into internal strife? Would they continue to cooperate with the Long Fei? Everything was unknown. Ningcheng had absolute control over the D clan, so much so that even she, a princess of Western Qin, couldn't control the D clan. This absolute control meant that once Ningcheng died, the D clan would fall into chaos. "Brother." Tang Li still wanted to argue, but Han Yunqi said calmly, "Tang Li, Ningcheng definitely doesn't want her brother to die in Jun Ixia's hands." Tang Li finally realized the seriousness of the situation. He was stunned. He knew how Ningcheng felt about the D clan and Ningcheng. Otherwise, when faced with so many temptations and threats, Ningcheng also had him in her heart. She wouldn't have refused to compromise with the Tang sect. This matter needs to be discussed at length. As Long Fei spoke, he turned to tell Su Donglin, "Send me the latest battle situation of the two armies in northern Li. Also, ask Myriad Merchant Hall about Bai Yuqiao's situation." Suddenly, Gu said coldly, "Long Fei, if you don't want to bring Poison Girl to Sky Mountain, I will." Gu was the one who really didn't care. The world's affairs had nothing to do with him. Unexpectedly, Long Fei actually said, "All right, After the snow melts, you can bring her there. This matter was too tricky, but the solution was very simple. Han Yunxi would first return to Sky Mountain and let the supremacy checker pulse to find the reason for the failure of dual cultivation. He would stay behind to preside over the cooperation between Eastern and Western Qin and personally lead the expedition to Northern Li.
Deal.
Gu was finally satisfied. However, Han Yunxi stared at the two of them with a sinister gaze. She just stared without saying a word. Chapter 1032. Han Yunxi stared at Long Fei Yi and Gu without saying a word, but the corners of her mouth curved into a sneer. These two guys were really interesting. They didn't even ask for her opinion and directly made a decision for her. What was this? Long Fei Yi and Gu reached an agreement. Tang Li was so happy that he slapped his thigh. That's it. When are we going to save them?
No.
Han Yunxi finally exploded. Don't forget that Bai Yanqing is in the dark, while we are in the light. Once the Eastern, Western Qin allied army went north, Long Fei Ye's whereabouts would be exposed. Bai Yanqing could find them at any time. Moreover, Jun Yixia was good at poisons. If she and Gu left, Long Fei Yi would have no one who was good at poisons who could compete with Jun Yixia. How could she rest assured? Moreover, if she left, the D army would be more difficult to manage. The communication between the Eastern, Western Qin and the Eastern, Western Qin would be more difficult. Although she didn't have absolute control over the D clan, as the princess, the D clan's army and the Chamber of Commerce would more or less know to restrain themselves. Han Yunxi really didn't know what kind of rotten idea these men had come up with. Gu didn't care so much. He only cared about Han Yunxi's safety. Therefore, he could abandon the world for Han Yunxi's sake. Long Fei Yi cared about a lot, but he also cared about Han Yunxi's safety. Therefore, he carried all the pressure and danger on his shoulders for the sake of the world and Han Yunxi. He was ready to face Bai Yanqing and Jun Yixia alone. He had fought with Gu before, and although he couldn't kill the immortal, he could trap them. As for Jun Yixia, with his current martial arts, Jun Yixia might not be able to poison him. As for the cooperation between Eastern and Western Qin and the Northern expedition, although it would be more difficult to communicate without Han Yunxi, he believed that he could handle it. The power of the Phoenix was an unknown accident. How could he allow this accident to remain in Han Yunxi's body for too long? In the face of Han Yunxi's anger, although Tang Li was anxious, he did not dare to speak again. Everyone was also silent, who knew that Long Fei Yi would be very firm and cold. It's decided then. I object, Han Yunxi said coldly. Objection overruled. The bigger picture is more important. Long Fei Yi was very serious, but Han Yunxi was even colder. For the sake of the big picture, I have to stay. After flattening Northern Li, we'll go to Tianshan together. Impossible. Long Fei Yi did not budge an inch. Once the Northern expedition started, this war would not end until 1 or 2 years later. In any case, I'm not leaving, Han Yunxi insisted to the end. Long Fei Yi did not speak again. His brows were tightly knitted, and he stared at her especially sternly. Han Yunxi let him stare, and looked into his eyes without fear. However, as time passed, she did not see his attitude change. This kind of cold and domineering Long Fei Yi made Han Yunxi feel unfamiliar. It was so unfamiliar that she felt like she had returned to a few years ago, when she first met him. At that time, no matter how cold he was, she was at most afraid. But now, her heart felt very uncomfortable. Long Fei Yi, this is my own matter. Don't I have the right to decide? Han Yunxi, you always don't listen to me. Can't you listen to me for once? The two of them spoke at the same time, but their words were completely different. Once they finished speaking, the two of them fell silent. The people around them did not dare to make a sound. However, Gu Beiwei spoke up. Your Highness, why don't we try to invite the 3 venerables down the mountain? Even if they could not go, Elder Kenzo and the 3 venerables could come down the mountain. It's impossible for the 3 venerables to leave Tianshan, Long Fei Yi replied calmly. If the 3 venerables were willing to leave Tianshan, they would not have to fight here for so long. Long Fei Yi did not argue with Han Yunxi anymore. He made a strong decision. It's decided. Contact the Myriad Merchant Hall Elders Guild. Tomorrow, we'll discuss the rescue and northern expedition. Han Yunxi did not argue. She stood there in a daze, her eyes dazed. No one knew what she was thinking. Long Fei Yi finished speaking and left. When he reached the courtyard's entrance, he stopped and turned back. He saw Han Yunxi still standing there. Coldly, he asked, Han Yunxi, why aren't you leaving? I'm not leaving, Han Yunxi replied coldly. At this moment, the originally quiet little courtyard became even quieter. Even the howling northern wind outside seemed to have stopped abruptly. Long Fei Yi's cold face turned even colder. However, Han Yunxi turned and entered the room. I'm tired. I'm not going anywhere. I want to catch up on sleep. With that, she slammed the door shut. Long Fei Yi turned and left. The group of people looked at each other, not daring to interfere. Did Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi have a fight? No one knew what to do. Gu was the first to leave. No one knew where he was hiding to catch up on sleep. Gu Beiwei and Tang Li left together. Tang Li was silent the whole way. Unknowingly, he followed Gu Beiwei back to his room. Sect Master Tang, you must be tired from the journey. You should go back and rest. When Gu Beiwei said this, Tang Li came back to his senses. He realized that he had walked into Gu Beiwei's courtyard. Gu Beiwei, should I wait for them to come back from Tianshan before begging them to save me? Tang Li lowered his head when he said this. Gu Beiwei could not see his expression, but he knew that he was very unwilling to say this. Sect Master Tang, do you want to hear the truth or a lie? Gu Beiwei asked patiently. A lie. Tang Li answered without hesitation. A lie? I don't need to say it. You should go back and rest. Gu Beiwei smiled helplessly. Tell me the truth. Tang Li finally raised his head. Gu Beiwei was a very compassionate person, but he was also a very cruel person. His compassion came from his compassion as a doctor, but his cruelty came from his pure and flawless heart. He was always so calm. When he looked at things, he would never be disturbed by anything. He was so clear that he was like a mirror that could restore everything to its original state. He said, Sect Master Tang, His Highness and the princess were wrong from the beginning. Tang Li was very surprised. What do you mean? If not for the unexpected power of the phoenix, everything would have gone smoothly. Big brother and sister-in-law would have even returned early. They would have had plenty of time to prepare. Sect Master Tang, His Highness and the princess's decision to save people at the beginning of spring and go on an expedition to the north was a very ignorant choice. This one believes that if not for the fact that Ning Jing was pregnant, His Highness would never have made such a stupid choice. Gu Beiwei said. Tang Li was immediately stirred up. He wanted to refute, but Gu Beiwei stopped him and continued. Sect Master Tang, after spring, the eastern and western Qin armies will definitely be able to reap the benefits. However, the beginning of spring is definitely not a good time. Because once spring comes, the ice and snow will melt, and the weather will be cold. The conditions on the battlefield will most likely be worse than winter. When these words were said, Tang Li was stunned. Why didn't he think of this? Although he didn't understand war, he understood the influence of climate on war. Sect Master Tang, the D clan army is the same as you. They are anxious to save people. The one they are saving is not Ning Jing, but rather Ning Cheng. So they agreed to send troops north at the beginning of spring. However, the entire East Qin army is against it. In their eyes, going north at the end of spring and the beginning of summer is the best time. Gu Beiwei stopped here. Back then, in order for Long Fei Yi to set out at the beginning of spring, it was easy to imagine how much effort he had to spend to convince the Bailey Army and the South Central Commander-in-Chief's armies. But Long Fei had never brought up any of these things. If Gu Beiwei didn't mention it, how many people would know how difficult it was for Long Fei Yi? Tang Li was silent, but Gu Beiwei wasn't finished. In fact, when he saw Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi parting on bad terms, Gu Beiwei already had the intention to persuade Tang Li. So, Tang Li followed him to his courtyard in a daze, and he didn't remind him the entire way. Sect Master Tang, His Highness and Princess dual cultivated, but they both failed at the last stage. The reason is still unknown. You are also a martial arts practitioner, so you should know that this matter shouldn't be delayed. When it comes to internal energy cultivation, it's fine if you don't get hurt, but once you get hurt, it will be very serious. Although His Highness had the princess go to Heavenly Mountain first, His Highness will still be in danger. Gu Beiwei seriously analyzed. Tang Li wasn't stupid. He knew that Gu Beiwei was telling him a fact by saying so much. This fact was that his brother was not only going against everyone's wishes to help him save Ningjing, but he was also taking a great risk. The ignorant Tang Li suddenly understood everything. He sat down and buried his head in his hands. He only felt that all the pressure was on him, and the decision-making power was also in his hands. After a while, Tang Li finally spoke. Dr. Gu, are you trying to persuade me to give up? Gu Beiwei nodded honestly.
Yes.
Ningjing will give birth in February next year, Tang Li muttered to himself. If the war dragged on until the end of spring or the beginning of summer, the rescue mission would definitely be delayed until after Ningjing gave birth. Not to mention whether Ningjing's delivery would expose Mu Ling, Er's fake pregnancy. Even if it wasn't exposed, Junie Xie would definitely mistake the child for Mu Ling. The child would definitely be taken out of Tiger's den as a hostage. Tang Li really wasn't an idiot. Everything could be discussed before the war started, but once it did, the East and West Qin alliance would definitely trample over Northern Li without leaving any leeway. It was highly likely that they'd give up on the hostages. Dr. Gu, Ningjing will give birth in February next year. Tang Li stubbornly emphasized the time. She will give birth in February. I know. Gu Beiwei's eyes were filled with pity. He knew very well what this timing meant. However, his words were merciless. Sect Master Tang, this humble one has no right to persuade you to make any choice. However, this humble one has a need to tell you the truth. As the sect master of the Tang sect, you should know all of this. Tang Li didn't reply. He continued to mumble and repeat Ningjing's delivery time. Sect Master Tang, go back and rest. Gu Beiwei gently patted Tang Li's shoulder and entered the room. Tang Li turned to leave, his expression wooden as he wandered aimlessly around East Origin Hall. He circled around every courtyard and hall in East Origin Hall. When the sky turned dark, he unknowingly walked to Han Yunqi's door. He saw that the lights in the room were on, but he didn't knock on the door. Instead, he sat down by the door. Growing up, he had never thought about the problem of growing up. However, today, he suddenly experienced what it meant to grow up overnight. Late at night, the lights in Han Yunqi's room were still on. Tang Li finally got up and gently knocked on the door. He said, "Sister-in-law, can I ask you something?" Chapter 1033. Tang Li waited for a long time, but there was no response from the room. He knocked on the door again. "Sister-in-law, I know you're here. Don't be angry with my brother. Let me ask you something. It's very important." He waited for a while more. Han Yunqi did not open the door, but she answered him. "It's already so late. If there's anything, we can talk about it tomorrow." "What if I have to ask now?" "Sister-in-law, can you open the door?" Tang Li asked. If Han Yunqi had stepped out, she would definitely have noticed Tang Li's strange behavior. His expression was a little dazed, as if he had lost his soul. Han Yunqi was silent for a long time, but she still did not open the door. She said calmly, "Go ahead." Tang Li suddenly became serious and asked, "Sister-in-law, is the end of spring and the beginning of summer the best time for the expedition to the north?" The person in the room seemed very surprised and did not answer for a long time. "Sister-in-law, is that right?" Tang Li stubbornly wanted an answer. The room was still silent. Tang Li did not ask again. He stood quietly and waited. The person in the room naturally knew that he was waiting. "Tang Li, did the Bailey Army's people look for you?" Han Yunqi asked seriously. Once she said this, what else did Tang Li have to ask? Sister-in-law also knew that the Bailey army had objected to the expedition at the beginning of spring. Otherwise, she would not have asked him this. Actually, Tang Li already knew the answer. He did not know why he was so persistent in asking, as if he was looking for a reason to convince himself. He leaned his head against the door and did not answer for a long time. Tang Li, your brother and Myriad Merchant Hall have discussed the expedition at the beginning of spring. Don't listen to the Bailey army's people. Han Yunxi was anxious. Tang Li still did not speak. Han Yunxi stood inside the room and waited. Just as she was about to open the door, Tang Li spoke again. Sister-in-law, I understand. I'm here tonight to ask you for a favor. What's the matter? Why are you being so polite? Han Yunxi asked cautiously. Sister-in-law, please persuade my brother to postpone the northern expedition until the end of spring and the beginning of summer. That's the best time. Let my brother accompany you to Tianshan Mountain. When you come back, we'll go and save them. Tang Li seemed to be answering Han Yunxi, but also seemed to be talking to himself. He muttered, I've thought about it. Ning Jing's belly is big, so it's inconvenient for her to move around. If we rashly go to save her, she'll definitely get in the way. It'll be even more inappropriate if the fetus is affected. Why don't we just wait for the child to be born before we go and save her? Han Yunxi abruptly cut him off. Tang Li, have you lost your mind? Once the child was born, how could Jun Yi lock the child and the mother in the same place? The child would definitely be taken away. Do you want her child to be a hostage at birth? Can you guarantee that Bai Yuqiao can help us find out the child's whereabouts? Can you guarantee that we'll be able to find the child at the same time? Tang Li Jun Yi isn't that stupid. Although Han Yunxi couldn't bear it, she still said, Tang Li, you have to know that everything can be discussed before the war. Once the war starts, the two armies won't give up any opportunity to flatten Northern Li just because of a child. In other words, it was very likely that the child would be abandoned. Tang Li didn't say anything. The two of them were separated by a door. The silence between them was enough to quiet the entire night. Finally, Han Yunxi said, Tang Li, this matter has been decided. Don't make trouble for yourself. Your brother is at the Bailey army. No one will dare to do anything to you. Don't worry. Sister-in-law, I can't let my brother take risks and make mistakes because of my own selfishness. In the quiet night, Han Yunxi could clearly hear that Tang Li's voice was choked with sobs. He said, Sister-in-law, I know my brother isn't here. Please don't let him know about this. Help me persuade him. Since I was young, my brother has always doted on me. No matter how big the problem was, he would help me shoulder it. But this time, I have to shoulder it myself. Tang Li's voice grew choked with sobs. Ever since he was young until now, no one has been able to help him shoulder his problems. He's always shouldered them himself. From today onwards, Tang Li, can't let my own matters. Before he could finish speaking, the door suddenly opened. Han Yunxi wasn't the only one standing by the door. Long Feiyu was also there. Tang Li was shocked and instinctively stepped back. He didn't expect his brother to be in the room too. His brother and sister-in-law quarreled, and sister-in-law didn't return to the bedroom. He thought that they were still at odds and weren't together. Long Feiyu walked out expressionlessly and stopped in front of Tang Li. Tang Li was embarrassed and nervous. He didn't explain anything and was about to leave. However, Long Feiyu stopped him. Stop. Tang Li was actually very obedient to Long Feiyu's words. He almost reflexively stopped, but it was only for a moment. Soon, he hurried towards the door. Long Feiyu's figure flashed and blocked his way. Tang Li resentfully turned his head away and didn't dare to look at him. Are you sure? Long Feiyu asked. Yes. Tang Li answered without hesitation. Look at me and answer me. Long Feiyu said sternly. Tang Li kept looking to the side and didn't dare to turn his head. Go back to sleep, Long Feiyu ordered. Who would have thought that Tang Li would turn around and look at him with a serious expression? Brother, I'm sure. I've thought about it all day. I'm sure. Long Feiyu clenched his fists so tightly that they cracked. He wasn't angry at Tang Li, but rather at the person who instigated Tang Li. This was his most cherished disciple, his younger brother whom he had protected for over 20 years. Among his relatives in the East Qin camp, he was the one who had the least ambition, the most carefree, the purest, and the one who lived the most carefree life. Who was it that had told him so many important things? Who was it that had instigated him to sacrifice himself for the sake of the country rather than save his wife and children? Who was it that had placed such a heavy responsibility on his shoulders? Could it be that he, Long Fei Yi, hadn't endured enough in his life? Was Tang Li also here to bear it? Has Bailey Yuanlong arrived? Long Fei Yi asked. On the way back, he had ordered Bailey Yuanlong to personally come over and discuss the alliance with the D clan military. Bailey Yuanlong and the other deputy generals should have arrived in the next few days. Brother, I'm sure. This is my own matter. I have the right to make my own decision. Tang Li said loudly. What do you know? Long Fei Yi said coldly. Today, he had been infuriated by Han Yunxi. Now, he was even more infuriated by Tang Li. Tang Li looked into Long Fei Yi's eyes and choked with sobs. I understand you. Brother, I understand. I understand everything. Long Fei Yi was stunned, but he immediately avoided Tang Li's gaze. For over 20 years, this younger brother of his had never looked at him or spoken to him so seriously. Only then did Long Fei Yi realize how resolute Tang Li was. As soon as Long Fei Yi averted his gaze, Tang Li took the opportunity to avoid him and escape through the door. Brother, General Bailey is already outside the city. I'll go pick them up. With that, he hurriedly left. Only then did Long Fei Yi realize that it wasn't Bailey Yuanlong who had instigated Tang Li. If it wasn't someone from the Bailey clan, who else would have told Tang Li that late spring and early summer was the best time to go to war? Long Fei Yi quickly thought of someone. He immediately walked out the door. Seeing this, Han Yunxi hurriedly chased after him. Long Fei Yi quickly arrived at Gu Beiyue's courtyard and knocked on the door without any trace of politeness. Han Yunxi stood in the distance, watching with a complicated expression. Your Highness, I'm here. Gu Beiyue's voice came from behind him. Actually, he had been waiting for Long Fei Yi at the tea table in the courtyard. He had said so much to Tang Li, so it would be strange if Long Fei Yi didn't come to settle the score with him. Long Fei Yi looked at him coldly. What do you mean? Gu Beiyue had already stood up and walked over. Faced with Long Fei Yi's rage, he was neither servile nor overbearing. He only said one sentence, and it made Long Fei Yi fall silent. He said, Your Highness, Tang Li isn't the only one by your side, and Tang Li isn't the only one with a wife and children. The northern expedition at the beginning of spring is bound to increase casualties. Moreover, the power of the phoenix is not only the princess's problem, but also yours. If the dual cultivation fails, you'll be in greater danger. Your Highness, you should know that you're the same as Ning Cheng. Once you fall, whether it's the Bailey Army, the Commander-in-Chief's office, or the Tang sect, none of them will be willing to cooperate with Western Qin. When that time comes, no one can reverse the consequences. Gu Beiyue was very calm. Your Highness is a wise person. You should know that this northern expedition is of great importance. No one can afford to lose. If you're not fully prepared, it's better to wait than to rush. Long Fei Yi smiled bitterly. Gu Beiyue, you're crueler than this crown prince. Your Highness, this isn't cruelty. This is a choice, Gu Beiyue said calmly. There's only right and wrong in making a choice. There's no such thing as mercy or cruelty. Long Fei Yi was cruel to Tang Li. However, once the northern expedition was changed, many soldiers would feel that Long Fei Yi was merciful. Most of the soldiers in the Commander-in-Chief's office, the Bailey Army, and even the Ning family army had never been to Northern Li. They hadn't experienced the coldest beginning of spring in Northern Li. In this kind of situation, it was normal to freeze to death or die of typhoid or disease. There was no absolute standard for cruelty and mercy, but there was right and wrong. Your Highness, the difficulty of the Emperor's path lies in making a choice. Gu Beiyue took a step back and bowed respectfully. He said seriously, This one hopes that you'll be careful about what's right and wrong. The anger in Long Fei Ye's eyes had already been extinguished. He looked at Gu Beiwei and couldn't help but laugh. He laughed until he shook his head. Han Yunxi listened to Gu Beiwei's words, and her heart was filled with emotion. Who said that the one who obtained the perplexing butterfly illusion would obtain the world? Only the one who obtained Gu Beiwei would obtain the world. He was a true doctor. He treated illnesses, people, the heart, and even the world. He possessed the rare calmness of a doctor and the rare ability to make a choice. Tonight, he had treated Long Fei. Your Highness, it's getting late. Please go back. This one is alone. The choice is up to you, Gu Beiwei said seriously. Long Fei didn't say anything. He stood there for a moment before leaving. When he reached the door, he saw Han Yunxi waiting for him. Han Yunxi didn't say anything. She could understand what Gu Beiwei meant by the way of the emperor, but she admitted that she couldn't make a choice. She couldn't bear to part with Tang Li, and she was even more reluctant to part with Ning Jing, the Ning Jing who had been waiting to see the father of her child. Long Fei said lightly, "Ask Bai Yuqiao if he has a plan to protect us." Okay. Han Yunxi nodded immediately. She couldn't guess what choice Long Fei would make, but at least he wanted to ask Bai Yuqiao's opinion. This meant that he hadn't given up on Tang Li and Ning Jing. What answer would Bai Yuqiao give them? Chapter 1034. What answer would Bai Yuqiao give to Long Fei and the rest? Without a doubt, this answer would affect Long Fei's plans. Long Fei and Han Yunxi wouldn't be able to sleep that night. Tang Li had already rushed out of the city to wait for General Bailey and his deputy generals to arrive. He stood in the howling northern winds, letting his wide cloak flutter in the wind. The north wind hurt his face, and it seemed to hurt his eyes as well. He couldn't even open his eyes. Facing this kind of wind, even if there were tears, they wouldn't be able to flow out. They would only be blown away by the wind. Tang Li knew that he wasn't crying. Tang Li stood in the wind until daybreak. The wind and snow had blown all night as well. Bailey Yuanlong had personally led a few deputy generals over to Tang Li. He was stunned as soon as he saw him. Tang Clan head, why are you here? The Tang Clan and the Bailey army had a wonderful relationship. In terms of status, the Tang Clan wasn't as honorable as the Bailey army. After all, the Bailey clan was one of the 7 noble clans. In terms of power, the Tang Clan couldn't compare to the Bailey army either. After all, the Bailey army controlled a navy. This year, Bailey Yuanlong had taken advantage of Tianning's civil unrest to form an army. But now that the Tang Clan had produced Consort Wan, they become in-laws with the East Qin imperial family. Their status had instantly risen. Tang Zijin and Aunt Ru had always considered themselves as Long Fei's elders. This made Bailey Yuanlong very dissatisfied as a subordinate. Bailey Yuanlong, on the other hand, had always made strict demands for the Tang Clan's assassination weapons, which made the Tang Clan very dissatisfied as well. Naturally, they hid their dissatisfaction in each other's hearts. They weren't stupid enough to start fighting among themselves before East Qin was restored. In Bailey Yuanlong's eyes, there wasn't much difference between Tang Li and a wastrel. If not for His Highness and Tang Li's status as the Tang sect master, Bailey Yuanlong wouldn't have paid any attention to him. 2 months ago, His Highness was in a hurry to save Tang Li's wife, the daughter of the D clan Ning Jing. He insisted on sending troops at the beginning of spring. Because of this matter, he had exchanged more than 30 letters with His Highness in just a few days, but he still could not persuade His Highness. From then on, he looked down on the Tang sect and Tang Li. In his eyes, not only was Tang Li a prodigal, but he was also a good-for-nothing who dragged him down. Of the sons of the Bailey army, which one of them hadn't fought bloody battles on the battlefield? His Bailey family's daughters, which one of them hadn't sacrificed themselves for the East Qin Empire? Even Bailey Mingxiang, who hadn't married outside, didn't they still suffer the pain of raising their blood? Why should the Tang sect be an exception? Why should the Bailey family soldiers risk their lives to protect the Tang sect's D clan's daughter-in-law? Bailey Yuanlong was too unwilling. Although he hadn't argued with His Highness last time and cut off their correspondence, he still came in person this time with the heart to argue. He was no longer as polite as before. At this very moment, Bailey Yuanlong's Tang sect master was especially meaningful and rather unkind. If it were before, Tang Li would have been baffled. He knew that Bailey Yuanlong was dissatisfied with the Tang sect, but he wouldn't have made it so obvious. But today, Tang Li saw through Bailey Yuanlong's mockery. He laughed frivolously, not like the head of a sect, but more like a ruffian noble son. He said, "General Bailey, this little nephew has specially come to pick you up. Hee, you're His Highness' younger brother. How could a mere general like old man dare trouble you?" Bailey Yuanlong said mockingly. Tang Li tilted his head and laughed indifferently and lazily. He said, "General Bailey, I actually didn't want to come, but what?" Bailey Yuanlong was curious. "But my brother is afraid that you'll annoy him as soon as you arrive, buzzing around his ear like an old fly that can't be swatted to death. That's why he specially asked me to stop you." Before Tang Li could finish, Bailey Yuanlong angrily interrupted him. "What nonsense are you spouting? Tang Li, old man is telling you. If it weren't for His Highness protecting you, you would have lost your little life long ago. So, what if my brother is protecting me? Are you jealous?" Tang Li laughed loudly. "Why don't you have your brother challenge my brother to a duel?" Bailey Yuanlong almost spat out a mouthful of blood when he heard this, and the deputies behind him almost laughed out loud. Bailey Yuanlong didn't have an older brother. Even if he did, he wouldn't dare challenge Long Fei Yi to a duel. That would be courting death. "Tang Li, you're abusing your power to bully others. Who do you think you are?" One of the deputies stepped forward. "This clan head is abusing his power to bully others, so what?" Tang Li asked Bailey Yuanlong coldly. "My brother asked me to bring you a message. Are you going to listen to it or not? Tell me." Judging from Tang Li's attitude, it seemed that His Highness really did send someone to bring him here. "What is it? Hurry up and say it," Bailey Yuanlong urged. Tang Li rubbed his chin and muttered to himself, "Where was my brother? Oh, he was talking about flies. My brother thinks that you're as annoying as a fly, so he specially asked me to tell you." He repeated this sentence and scolded him again. Bailey Yuanlong was thoroughly enraged. "Enough. Tang Li, just you wait." However, before he could finish speaking, Tang Li interrupted him in a very domineering and loud voice. "That's why my brother specially asked me to tell you that the northern expedition will be postponed to the end of spring and the beginning of summer. You can go back now and come back in 2 months." Bailey Yuanlong and his lieutenants were all stunned by these words. They couldn't believe their ears. His Highness had actually changed his mind? They had even prepared all sorts of reasons to continue persuading His Highness. Who would have thought that His Highness would change his mind before they even reached the three-way black market? In order to rescue Ningcheng as soon as possible, the D clan naturally wanted to mobilize their troops as soon as possible. Who was it that affected His Highness' perception? How could he so decisively send them back? Bailey Yuanlong began to seriously size up Tang Li, only to see that Tang Li was still as sloppy and hedonistic as before. His Highness had changed his mind, so why would this brat listen to him? Why was he still acting like nothing had happened? Wasn't he making a fuss? Wasn't he anxious? Bailey Yuanlong didn't quite believe it, but Tang Li had personally said it, so he had no reason to not believe him. Because Tang Li had the least reason to lie about this matter. "Tang Li, what's going on?" Bailey Yuanlong asked seriously. "Go back when I tell you to. Do you want to disobey?" Tang Li said, as he took out a token. This was the East Qin Imperial token. Anyone who saw it would feel as if they were seeing Long Fei Yi himself. Actually, he didn't have this token either. It was Su Donglin's. Before he left last night, he had robbed Su Donglin. Seeing the token, Bailey Yuanlong and the deputies didn't dare ask any more questions. They all knelt down and said, "This subordinate obeys." Bailey Yuanlong got up and mounted his horse again. Just as he was about to turn around and head back, Lung Lung said, "Tang Li, who convinced His Highness? I'll have to trouble you to thank him for this, General."
All right.
Tang Li smiled until his eyes turned into crescents. It was a very beautiful sight. It wasn't until the figures of Bailey Yuanlong and the others disappeared into the morning wind and snow that Tang Li's smile gradually disappeared, replaced by a dazed expression. Su Donglin, who had been hiding on the side all this time, hurriedly walked out. He was about to cry. "Master Li, I beg you, hurry up and return the token to this subordinate. This subordinate is going to suffer a great calamity. This subordinate is finished. What are you afraid of? This sect master will protect you." Tang Li tossed the token to him. "Sect Master Tang, this subordinate must report this matter to His Highness. This subordinate can't. Can you be quiet? I want to be alone." Tang Li suddenly interrupted Su Donglin angrily. Su Donglin withered. He could be tough with General Bailey in the name of His Highness, but he couldn't do it with Tang Li. "Quiet?" Tang Li smiled wryly. He just wanted to be alone.
How?
How did it become him wanting to be alone? How much did he want to be alone? "Su Donglin, go and complain. While you're at it, tell my brother that Ning Jing and I, as well as the child, are all waiting for him." After saying this, Tang Li mounted his horse and galloped into the depths of the wind and snow. Who knew how much of an impact Tang Li's decision to drive away Bailey Yuanlong would have on Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi? They were still considering it. At this very moment, there was one person who was also paying attention to the timing of the northern expedition. This person was none other than Bai Yanqing. After leaving the Evil Sword School, Bai Yanqing had indeed come to northern Li. He was currently in Tiana City, the place where Jun Yi Xia had once devoured soldiers. Jun Yi Xia had replaced all of Bai Yanqing's trusted aides, but Bai Yanqing still had the ability to plant spies around him. After all, Bai Yanqing was Jun Yi Xia's master. He knew Jun Yi Xia like the back of his hand. How many hostages Jun Yi Xia had in his hands, how Jun Yi Xia and Ning Qing cooperated, and various other matters. Bai Yanqing knew everything clearly. "Master, Jun Yi Xia borrowed the Red Barbarian cannon from Ning Qing a few days ago," the servant reported. "Haha, the Red Barbarian cannon can't save him. Only the hostages in Tiger's prison can save him. Just wait and see. When spring comes tomorrow, Western Qin will definitely join forces to conquer the north." Bai Yanqing said with a smile. "Master, Western Qin just fought a war in the south yesterday." The servant was very confused. That's just an act. Just wait and see. The D clan is anxious to save their master. When spring comes, they will definitely conquer the north." Bai Yanqing was very certain. He could see the situation clearly that Jun Yi Xia couldn't see through. He had also been paying attention to the few small battles between Western Qin. He had long seen through the tricks. He was very sure that Jun Yi Xia had been tricked by Ning Qing. However, he couldn't figure out how Ning Qing could cooperate with the D clan and Long Fei Yi while he was in the army. With Jun Yi Xia's temper, he would lower his guard when dealing with other hostages, but he would definitely keep a close eye on someone like Ning Qing. Bai Yanqing's trusted aide was still secretly investigating, but he still couldn't find out who Ning Qing's spy was. How about a bet? When spring comes next year, the war will definitely start. Bai Yanqing was in a good mood today. The servant didn't dare and hurriedly said, "Master is wise. This servant is stupid. Bai Yanqing didn't say anything else. He just smiled cold. He thought that as long as they conquered the north, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi wouldn't be able to get to Tianshan so easily. Evil Sword School would definitely have more time to settle that big matter. Bai Yanqing definitely wouldn't have thought that the person who betrayed Jun Yi Xia was his good disciple, Bai Yuqiao, who had admired Jun Yi Xia for many years. However, Jun Yi Xia guessed it. On this day, Jun Yi Xia received a secret letter. It was brought back by the soldiers he sent to Tiger's prison. Chapter 1035. The soldiers that Jun Yi Xia sent to patrol Tiger's prison brought back a secret letter. This secret letter was secretly given to the soldiers after they patrolled Su Xiuyu's small courtyard. This secret letter only had 2 sentences. The first sentence was that there was a traitor in Tiger's prison. The second sentence was that the Eastern and Western Qin would join forces and rescue people at the beginning of spring. Although it was only 2 short sentences, it was enough to describe the true situation at Tiger's prison. No matter how stupid Jun Yixia was, he knew that he had been tricked by Ning Cheng. What a Ning Cheng! How dare you play this prince like this? Jun Yixia fiercely slammed the secret letter on the table. He used so much force that the wooden table cracked. The Eastern and Western Qin would join forces at the beginning of spring. This meant that the battles that the Eastern and Western Qin had been fighting in the past few months were all fake. They were all putting on a show for him to see. How could the Eastern and Western Qin cooperate without Ning Cheng's orders? His surveillance of Ning Cheng was unprecedentedly strict. In his army, who else could help Ning Cheng deliver the letter other than Bai Yuqiao? Jun Yixia was unable to restrain his anger. This was definitely the biggest loss he had ever suffered in his life. This was simply his humiliation. He angrily rushed out of the tent and strode towards Ning Cheng's camp. If he didn't kill Ning Cheng, he wouldn't be able to swallow this anger. Master, please wait. Jun Yixia's personal servant chased after him. He couldn't stop Jun Yixia, so he boldly grabbed Jun Yixia's hand. Jun Yixia turned around and glared at him coldly. Are you looking for death? Master, you can kill Ning Cheng now, but what about Han Yunqi and Long Feiyi? The servant asked in a low voice. This servant was called Hao San. He was Jun Yixia's closest attendant and had followed Jun Yixia for more than 10 years. Although he was only a servant, because he had been by Jun Yixia's side for many years, he had seen many things and gradually became smarter. He was like the eunuch by the emperor's side. He often gave Jun Yixia ideas, and they were all good ideas. Hao San's words made Jun Yixia calm down. He realized that it was not only Ning Cheng who had cheated him, but also the Long Feiyi and Han Yunqi behind Ning Cheng. Seeing this, Hao San hurriedly said, Master, we'll talk about it in the camp. This is both a crisis and an opportunity. Indeed, if a crisis was used well, then it was an opportunity. Who knows, they might even be able to catch Han Yunqi and Long Feiyi in one fell swoop. Jun Yixia did not say anything else and turned around to return to the camp. He put away the secret letter and whispered, what was the intention of the person who delivered the letter? Before discussing countermeasures, Jun Yixia naturally had to figure out the intention of the person who delivered the letter. The person who secretly gave this secret letter to the patrolling soldiers was none other than Uncle Cheng. Apart from Jinzi, whose origins were unknown, Jun Yixia had already thoroughly investigated the background of the hostages in his hands. Of course, he knew who Uncle Cheng was to Ning Cheng. Why would Uncle Cheng betray Ning Cheng? This was something he could not figure out, but he did not want to think about it. Right now, he only wanted to confirm whether Uncle Cheng's secret letter was completely trustworthy. Jun Yixia pondered for a moment and whispered, Send people to Tiger's prison and keep an eye on Bai Yuqiao. Remember, don't alert the enemy. Hao San immediately went to do it. Sure enough, a few days later, the people Jun Yixia sent intercepted the secret letter Bai Yuqiao sent to Three-Way Black Market and handed it to Jun Yixia. Jun Yixia opened it and found that it was filled with numbers that he could not understand at all. Without a doubt, this was a secret letter. Master, this is most likely the D clan's secret letter. This letter should have been written by Ning Jing. How about we ask Uncle Cheng to take a look? Hao San suggested. This king will personally make a trip. Jun Yixia said coldly. In order not to alert the enemy, everything in Tiger's prison was as usual. Bai Yuqiao did not know that the secret letter had already fallen into Jun Yixia's hands. Master's sudden departure from the army will inevitably arouse Ning Cheng's suspicions. Why not? Let the subordinate do it for you. Hao San asked. Jun Yixia hesitated for a moment before agreeing. These few days, he still went to Ning Cheng's camp from time to time to drink wine with him and chat about the war. He endured his anger and waited with all his might. After he had investigated everything clearly, he would definitely lure Long Feiyi and Han Yunqi over to catch a turtle in a jar. At that time, he would not mind personally killing Ning Cheng in front of Han Yunqi and Long Feiyi. He would wait. Over at Three-Way Black Market, everyone knew that Uncle Chung had an extreme opinion of Han Yunxi, but no one would have thought that Uncle Chung would betray Ning Chung and snitch on him. Regarding the situation of Ning Jing's group, everyone was temporarily at ease. Long Fei Yi did not blame Tang Li for faking the secret order and chasing away Bailey Yuanlong's group, nor did he make it public. Apart from Su Donglin and Han Yunxi, no one else knew about this matter. First, stealing a command token and faking an order was an extremely serious crime. Once others found out, it would be hard to avoid the meddlesome people in the East Qin camp making an issue out of it. Second, if Myriad Merchant Hall found out about this matter, how could Tang Li continue to mingle with the D clan as a son-in-law? Long Fei Yi postponed his meeting with the D clan's representative and still had not made a decision on whether to postpone the northern expedition. In these few days, he did not mention a single word about this matter. Other than reviewing urgent documents, he went to Gu Beiyue's courtyard to drink tea and play chess. He also did not mention the northern expedition to Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue was a very tactful person and never asked. Han Yunxi would always be wrapped in a large fox fur robe and sit on the swing to the side, watching the two of them from afar. Gu Beiyue's clothes were whiter than snow. Every move he made was quiet and elegant, like a hermit. Long Fei Yi wore white brocade clothes and a rare purple fox fur robe. He looked noble, mysterious, luxurious, and domineering. Han Yunxi suddenly felt that these two people were actually equal. Although one was the master and the other was the servant, Gu Beiyue was enough to sit on equal footing with Long Fei Yi. And Long Fei Yi could also tolerate Gu Beiyue. It had to be known that with Gu Beiyue's talent and temperament, if he had the heart, he would definitely be able to obtain a piece of the world. Any superior would fear and be on guard against him. However, Long Fei Yi did not guard against him at all. That day, after she quarreled with Long Fei Yi for a bit, Long Fei Yi returned to find her not long after. She actually did not sleep and sat there sulking. After Long Fei Yi entered the room, he did not say anything and just sat at the tea table to make tea. She also did not take the initiative to argue with him. She sat far away from him in a daze and soon fell asleep. Later on, Tang Li's voice came from outside the door.
It was the incident that happened that night.
Since that day, she had not taken the initiative to pay attention to Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi also did not speak to her. But every night, he would go to her room and sleep with her in his arms without making a sound. Many people were discussing whether or not Long Fei Yi had postponed the meeting with the D clan representatives because Bailey Yuanlong and the others had not yet arrived. However, Han Yunxi, who knew the truth, was very clear that Long Fei Yi had already made his decision long ago. He had long since agreed with Gu Beiyue's opinion and decided to postpone the northern expedition. Otherwise, he would not have really allowed Bailey Yuanlong and the others to return. What Long Fei Yi was hesitating about now was not the timing of the northern expedition, but his personal promise to Tang Li. There was only right and wrong in an emperor's decisions. All cruelty was relative. However, in the end, there would still be people who would be treated cruelly, right? Long Fei Yi was hesitating about personally treating Tang Li cruelly. Tang Li did not go anywhere. He had been obediently staying in East Origin Palace, waiting for his brother to personally come and settle this matter with him. Han Yunxi was also waiting. Han Yunxi was in a daze when she heard Gu Beiyue's laughter from the side. "Your Highness, thank you for letting me win." Han Yunxi turned around and saw that Gu Beiyue had won this round. In the past few days, Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiyue had competed 5 times. Although Gu Beiyue had won this round, Long Fei Yi was still slightly superior. It was still early. Han Yunxi thought that they would play another round. However, Long Fei Yi stood up and bid farewell. Han Yunxi was slightly alarmed. She hurriedly stood up and watched Long Fei Yi walk out the door. This guy left so early today. Could it be that he was going to find Tang Li? Han Yunxi watched silently. However, when Long Fei Yi reached the door, he stopped and turned around to look at her. He stood there for a moment, then quickly walked towards Han Yunxi. He took her hand, and without saying anything, turned around and left. Han Yunxi followed him in a daze, but soon began to laugh soundlessly. A man of action. Even when quarreling, he was so action-oriented. Long Fei Yi led Han Yunxi to Tang Li's courtyard. As soon as they entered, they saw Tang Li staring blankly at a small booklet in his hand. Han Yunxi knew that it was the booklet he had pestered Gu Beiwei for several months. It was a list of things to pay attention to when a woman gave birth and went through confinement. She had heard that he had returned to the Tang sect not long ago, not only to preside over the military opening ceremony, but also to personally prepare for Ning Cheng's delivery. Now, it seemed that his painstaking preparations were useless. Han Yunxi thought that she would be very free and easy, but when she reached the door, her heart could not help but twist. On the other hand, Long Fei Yi did not hesitate and strode in. Tang Li came to his senses and hurriedly put away the booklet as if nothing had happened. He chuckled and said, "Brother, you wanted to have tea with me?" This kid, still pretending? He had obviously been waiting all this time. Long Fei Yi patted him on the shoulder and said seriously, "I came to tell you that the northern expedition has been postponed until early summer. You have to be prepared." Long Fei Yi paused and immediately added, and Tang Li interrupted him. "Brother, don't worry. I won't go to Tiger's prison in secret. I promise I'll do what I say." Long Fei Yi's hand froze, but he did not say anything. He just pulled Tang Li over and hugged him for a while before letting him go. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi did not stay for long. Perhaps after they left, Tang Li would relax and not have to pretend so hard. On the way back, Long Fei Yi walked very slowly. Han Yunxi finally spoke. She lamented, "Long Fei Yi, when will the world be truly peaceful? When will there be no more wars? When will there be no more separation? When will there not be so many difficult choices?" Long Fei Yi looked at the drifting snow in the sky. There was a hint of determination in his eyes as he said, "Soon, soon." After being depressed for so many days, he finally gave Tang Li closure. Long Fei Yi's heavy heart also relaxed a lot. After instructing Su Donglin to reschedule the meeting with the D clan, he went to bed early. Long Fei Yi had a bad habit. If he stayed up late, Han Yunxi could sleep first. However, if he went to bed early, Han Yunxi was not allowed to stay up late. Han Yunxi wanted to cultivate the poison storage space, but his arms were wrapped around her, so she had no choice but to lie in his arms. Knowing that he was tired, Han Yunxi did not dare to move. If she moved, he would definitely wake up. She was not sleepy, so when she was bored to death, she suddenly remembered something important. Chapter 1036. The matter that Han Yunxi thought of was really very big. It was so big that it was related to Long Fei Yi's future. This matter was not anything else but the matter of having an heir. Her other hand secretly reached out of the quilt and carefully pressed her pulse to feel it. She had been secretly preparing. She didn't drink tea because she was afraid that it would affect the absorption of iron and aggravate her anemia. She had been so busy these days that her blood and qi were not very sufficient. These days, she had been busy with the northern expedition. She didn't notice that her good friend had delayed her visit until now. Could it be? Han Yunxi felt uneasy and nervous as she checked her own pulse. Who knew that her pulse would soon make her even more uneasy? She didn't feel the pregnancy pulse. In the early stages of pregnancy, not to mention the pulse, even the modern professional test paper might not be able to give the correct answer. Blood drawing and ultrasound examination were the most accurate. Therefore, Han Yunxi was not disappointed that she didn't feel the pregnancy pulse. She was even more uneasy and nervous. It was really impossible to predict the outcome of this kind of thing. She could only wait. Retracting her hand, Han Yunxi carefully turned over to face Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi only loosened his hand slightly and didn't let go. Han Yunxi was so close to him that her nose almost touched the tip of his nose. Looking at his incomparably handsome appearance, she couldn't help but imagine the future child. Would it be a boy or a girl? Would it be more like him or more like her? He would definitely love their child very, very much. The more Han Yunxi thought about it, the more she wanted to see Long Fei's appearance as a father. Han Yunxi hoped that their first child would be a girl. She especially wanted to see what Long Fei looked like when he had a little lover. Moreover, if their first child was a girl, they would have more relaxed and happy times. If it was a boy, he would be the eldest son. His future responsibilities would be very important. How could it be easy to share his father's worries and difficulties? Children born in the royal family were born with more than others and were destined to bear more than others. Han Yunxi wasn't so naive as to want to avoid these realities for her child. She hoped that her child would be hardworking, intelligent, and responsible. What she could help them avoid was the cruelty of the royal family's fratricide. Thinking of this, Han Yunxi suddenly realized that she seemed to be thinking too much, too far ahead. Right now, the world was still uncertain, and her disappointing stomach still hadn't given her any news. If Long Fei opened his eyes now, he would definitely see Han Yunxi's vexed expression, which was especially stupid. Han Yunxi really couldn't sleep, so she seriously pondered how to talk to the stewards of the D clan about the delay of the northern expedition. Since Long Fei had clearly told Tang Li the date of the northern expedition, then this matter must have been decided and would not change. The following meeting with the D clan was bound to be a tough battle. After all, the D clan had made ample preparations for the northern expedition in spring. They had been waiting for Long Fei and Han Yunxi to return to the three-way black market so that they could discuss the northern expedition as soon as possible and settle several important matters. It was almost the new year, and now he was telling them that the expedition to the north would be delayed by at least 2 months. What would they think? At this moment, in Myriad Merchant Hall, the representatives of the D clan's military, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Myriad Merchant Hall's Council of Elders were holding a secret meeting. This secret meeting had been going on since the morning. Long Fei had delayed the meeting time. They knew nothing of what had happened in East Origin Hall, and only thought that the Bailey Army's people had been delayed by the heavy snow and had yet to arrive. In fact, they had already held several secret meetings before this. They discussed how much of the D clan's interests should be preserved in the cooperation with East Qin, which side should take the initiative in the war, and which side should support, and other such issues. These issues were rather complicated, and the D clan's internal opinions were not unified, so they had to urgently discuss a conclusion when Long Fei met with them. Of course, they hoped to directly contact Ning Cheng. If these issues were decided by Ning Cheng, they would definitely obey, and there would be no need to argue for so long. Unfortunately, they had no way of directly contacting Ning Cheng. The information they received about Ning Cheng was all conveyed by Ning Jing. And the information Ning Jing knew was obtained by Yu Qiao's spies in Jun Yixia's army. Ever since Ning Cheng had been taken away by Jun Yixia, even Yu Qiao found it extremely difficult to directly contact him. Yu Qiao was a cautious person. The more people involved in this kind of communication, the more dangerous it would be. So, unless she had no other choice, she would not send a letter to the army, nor would she allow her trusted aides to send a letter to Ning Cheng. According to Yu Qiao's opinion, as long as Han Yunxi was around, the D clan had to listen to Han Yunxi. Ning Cheng only needed to keep Jun Yixia in check. Many people in the D clan, especially the military, were wary of Ning Jing. After all, Ning Jing was a married daughter, and Ning Jing was also married to Tang Li. Thus, the military, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Elders Guild no longer asked Ning Jing about the northern expedition. They used the method of consultation and voting to decide. It was precisely because of this that there were very few secret letters sent from Myriad Merchant Hall to Tiger's Prison. Hao San stayed in Tiger's Prison for a few days and returned empty-handed. Uncle Chung was unable to decipher the intercepted letter. Ning Jing had used the D clan's special digital ciphertext. Other than Ning Cheng, only Ning Cheng could understand it. Hao San reported this to Jun Yixia. Jun Yixia was extremely disappointed. If he could not decipher the secret letter, there was no point in intercepting it in the future. If he suddenly intercepted these secret letters, he would alert the enemy. So, after some hesitation, he decided to let Yu Qiao continue to be the messenger. "Have you talked to that old Chim?" Jun Yixia asked coldly. Bai Yuqiao's secret letter proved that Uncle Chung was not lying. However, he could not figure out why Uncle Chung would betray Ning Chung. Master, he did not want to talk to me. He asked me to pass a message to you. Shui-san replied truthfully. Speak. Jun Yixia was curious. He begged Master to give the D clan another chance on account of his meritorious service in exposing them. Persuade Ning Chung to cooperate with us. He said that if Ning Chung was willing, as long as he controlled Bai Yuqiao, he would not hesitate to deal with Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi. Shui-san replied. Jun Yixia frowned at first, then laughed loudly. This prince is not a fool. Ning Chung was already poisoned, yet he still dared to trick him. He clearly did not want his life anymore, so how could he still cooperate with him? Master, should we strengthen Tiger's prison's defenses? Shui-san asked. Of course. Jun Yixia narrowed his eyes and said coldly, this prince wants Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi to die in Tiger's prison, even if I have to cripple the 3 armies. Based on Northern Li's current situation and his military strength, even if he knew that Eastern and Western Qin were going to join forces to conquer the North, he was powerless and could not guard against them. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to kill their masters, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, before Eastern and Western Qin's army conquered the North. Once these 2 died in Tiger's prison, Eastern and Western Qin would fall into chaos, and the Northern expedition would not succeed. Compared to his previous impulsiveness, Jun Yixia was incomparably calm at this moment. It was not that he could keep his cool, but the situation forced him to keep his cool for now. He seriously instructed Shui-san, pass down my orders. No one is allowed to act rashly, and alert the enemy. Also, send someone to keep an eye on that Uncle Chung. Yes. Shui-san accepted the order and left. Jun Yixia sat down and muttered a name, Bai Yuqiao. Bai Yuqiao. He could not understand why Bai Yuqiao, who had adored him since young, would betray him. Was she threatened, or did she have other motives? He was not in a hurry. After capturing Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, he did not mind slowly interrogating that slut. A few days after Jun Yixia learned that Bai Yuqiao was a spy, Bai Yanqing also learned of this matter. Bai Yanqing didn't go anywhere but settled down in one of Skyriver City's residences. After receiving the secret letter, he was very surprised. It's actually that girl. Master, could there be a mistake in this information? Miss Yuqiao has always liked Jun Yixia. The entire 100 Poisons sect knows about this. The servant was very incredulous. Strange. Strange. With Bai Yanqing's understanding of that female disciple, he really could not figure out the reason. Investigate and find out the reason. There must be something fishy going on here. Bai Yuqiao was sitting alone on a tatami mat, slowly sipping plum wine from her pot. Seeing that the servant was about to leave, he called out, How about another bet? The servant was terrified. This servant does not dare. Does not dare. If old man says you dare, then you dare. Let's make a bet. Can that brat Jun Yixia capture Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi? Bai Yanqing asked. There were tiger beasts in Tiger's prison, and there were many traps. If Jun Yixia wanted to catch a turtle in a jar, there would definitely be an ambush. Jun Yixia still had a chance of winning. The servant spoke his thoughts, causing Bai Yanqing to laugh loudly. That old man is betting that Jun Yixia will lose. The servant did not understand, and did not dare to ask further. He patted his horse for a while before retreating. This servant had followed Bai Yanqing for a long time, but until now, he still could not figure out what his master wanted to do. He had no intention of vying for the world, nor did he seem to want to face Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi directly. He had an immortal body. If he really wanted to deal with Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi, it should be very easy. However, he still had no intention of taking revenge. The snow and wind blew, and the weather grew colder. In the blink of an eye, it was already the 29th of the 12th lunar month. Tomorrow was New Year's Eve. Long Fei Yi had arranged to meet with the D clan this very morning at East Origin Hall's Jindong Hall. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were naturally present. Aside from them, only Gu Beiwei and Tang Li were present. The D clan had brought quite a few people with them, led by Ning Nuo, Myriad Merchant Hall's 5 elders, Deputy General Shui from the military, and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's Elder Chen from Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, making a total of 12 people. Anyone who saw the D-Clan's lineup could guess that they were a group of dragons without a leader. Moreover, they hadn't reached a consensus before coming here. Long Fei Yi had always hated crowds, so he creased his brows as soon as he saw Su Donglin bring the 12 people into the main hall. It had to be said that although he didn't want to see Ningqing, he especially wished that Ningqing was here. Gu had no interest in today's matters at first, but he had hurried over as soon as he heard that so many people had come. It was a rare chance to see Long Fei Yi quarrel with so many people, so how could he miss it? Yes, as long as Long Fei Yi's northern expedition was delayed, both sides would definitely start quarreling. Chapter 1037. The East Arrival Hall of East Origin Hall was very imposing. It was called a receiving hall, but it was more like a receiving hall. Currently, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were seated high up on the golden-threaded cedar seats in the center, one on the left and one on the right. There was a tea table between them. Steam curled up from the tea, filling the air with its fragrance. The room was silent. On either side of the lofty, noble seat were 2 rows of seats. Only 2 people were seated on Long Fei Yi's side. One was Tang Li, while the other was Gu Beiwei. Meanwhile, over a dozen people sat on Han Yunxi's side, including Ning Noa, 5 elders of Myriad Merchant Hall, 3 elders of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, and 3 deputy generals of the military. Everyone was seated. Before Long Fei Yi could even order someone to serve tea, Ning Noa had the head elder beside him move aside and empty a spot. He teased Gu Beiwei, "North Moon, sit here." His Beiwei made it sound like he was very familiar with the man. Although that was all Ning Noa said, everyone present was smart enough to know what he meant. Gu Beiwei was a member of the Shadow Clan, an important member of the Western Qin faction. How could he sit on Long Fei Yi's side? Gu Beiwei did not decline. He only smiled and stood up to walk over. Ningqing was satisfied. He stood up in a hurry to receive him. North Moon, the Shadow and D-clans were close friends in the past. My brother and I have been searching for a descendant of the Shadow clan all these years. I never thought you'd be one. Gu Beiwei did not answer. Instead, he modestly gestured for him to sit. Young Master Noa, please sit.
Sit, sit.
Ning Noa returned the gesture in a hurry. The 2 of them sat down at the same time. Ning Noa scooted over and whispered, "North Moon, when I took you as a hostage back then, it really was..." Gu Beiwei still did not answer. He only said indifferently, "There's no need to mention the past. Today's matter is important." Such a sickly and weak person, yet he was like an iron wall, invulnerable, such an easygoing person, yet extremely difficult to get close to. Ning Noa's intimate North Moon did not close the distance between them. After Gu Beiwei left, only Tang Li was left on Long Fei Yi's side. Meanwhile, the seats on Han Yunxi's side were basically full, leaving only 1 seat. Although Ning Noa and Gu Beiwei didn't succeed, the elders and Deputy General Shui were still very proud. Today, they came with the intention of negotiating. Gu Beiwei's return made them feel that they had won a round before the negotiation even began. They had the advantage in numbers, so their momentum was enough to overwhelm Long Fei's side. Deputy General Shui was especially pleased. One had to know that most of the matters to be discussed today were military affairs. However, Long Fei Yi did not even glance at the D-clan. He continued to read the urgent letter in his hand. Very soon, Long Fei Yi finished reading the urgent letter. He tilted his head and whispered a few orders to Su Donglin. Only then did he begin the negotiation. However, before he could even speak, a rampant and unruly laugh rang out from outside the door. "You didn't call me over to such a lively place? Poison girl, you're so mean." Everyone looked over and saw Gu stride in casually. He glanced at Tang Li in particular disdain, then walked over to the D-clan's side without any hesitation. He sat down on the last seat. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. If I came a step later, there wouldn't be any seats left. Gu muttered to himself. Han Yunxi smiled bitterly inside. She thought that if Gu didn't cause trouble that day, she would definitely find him abnormal. Just like that, the D clan's side was filled to the brim. On Long Fei Ye's side, Tang Li sat alone in a row of more than 10 seats. Looking at the empty seat opposite them, the two deputies behind Deputy General Xue couldn't help but snicker. This made Tang Li very embarrassed. He looked to his left and right and had the misconception that his brother was not popular at all. Long Fei Yi, aren't you going to serve the tea? Is this how you treat your guests? Gu Qishao muttered to himself. With Gu's help, the D clan was undoubtedly more confident and smug. However, Long Fei Yi treated him like air. He looked at Ning Nuo and asked coldly, "Who's in charge of the D clan now?" The D clan's expression stiffened when they heard this. There wasn't a single person in charge of the D clan now. Ning Nuo had the status, but not the authority or power to do so. Myriad Merchant Hall's Council of Elders had the authority and power to do so, but they were divided internally. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's elders and the military's deputy generals didn't have the authority, but the military was a direct participant in military affairs and had to participate in the discussions. The military was very unyielding and didn't fear Myriad Merchant Hall cutting their pay at a critical time like this. Thus, their differences with Myriad Merchant Hall weren't small either. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, on the other hand, stood on the military side. Long Fei Ye's first question was already hard for the D clan to answer. Long Fei Yi didn't rush them, but waited patiently. Ning Nuo and the head elder exchanged glances before replying. Since my big brother isn't here, this one and Myriad Merchant Hall's Council of Elders will naturally be in charge of the D clan. Long Fei Yi asked again, "Who's in charge of the Council of Elders?" "This one." The head elder replied immediately. In front of outsiders, the Council of Elders' authority had to be maintained. Although the others had objections, none of them dared to speak up. In any case, they all had the right to speak during the negotiations later. Ning Nuo was about to ask why the Bailey Army's men hadn't come when Long Fei Yi said coldly, "All irrelevant people get out." Long Fei Yi's tone was more like an order than a chase. Ning Nuo gave a start, and the people behind him were even more surprised. For a moment, none of them understood Long Fei Yi's intentions. However, they quickly came back to their senses, feeling embarrassed and angry. Deputy General Xue was the first to rise to his feet and ask, "East Qin Crown Prince, are you sincere about joining our D clan's allied army? What right do you have to talk about cooperation with this Crown Prince?" Long Fei Yi retorted. Deputy General Xue's heart gave a start before he realized his status. Long Fei Yi was the East Qin Crown Prince and ruler, while he was only a deputy general of the D clan's military. He truly did not have the right to discuss anything with Long Fei Yi. Actually, he did not have such a big heart to directly discuss with Long Fei Yi. He had come today for the Bailey Army's men. God knows why the Bailey Army's men still hadn't shown up. Deputy General Xue stood there, not knowing whether to advance or retreat. He was very angry and embarrassed. Luckily, Ning Nuo had started in time, giving him a way out. "Deputy General Xue, don't be rude." Once these words were said, Deputy General Xue angrily retreated. Long Fei Yi's words made the D clan realize their status, but also made everyone very confused. Today's meeting, how did Long Fei Yi plan to discuss it? What was there to discuss? To what extent was there to discuss it? Ning Nuo tried to smooth things over, politely saying, "Your Highness, Deputy General Xue is now in charge of the Ning family army. He has been stationed at the three-way battlefield for many years, so he is very familiar with the three-way pass. Today's meeting is about military matters, so there are many matters that he will discuss with General Bailey. The military will discuss the specifics of the cooperation among themselves," Long Fei Yi said. Now, everyone knew that Long Fei Yi did not plan to discuss the specifics of the cooperation in this meeting. It was just a meeting between the leaders of the two sides. Although they were unwilling, the few elders and deputy generals of the military still left resentfully and waited outside. They knew that they did not have the right to speak with Long Fei Yi, so they could only wait for the meeting to begin. They thought that after the two masters had finished their discussion, the Bailey Army's men and even Kangon Private Bank's men would make an appearance. After all, time was of the essence. The specifics of the cooperation had to be discussed as soon as possible so that they could begin their preparations. Now, there were only two people left on the D clan side, Ning Noa and Myriad Merchant Hall's Grand Elder, Gu Beiwe and Gu. Gu Beiwe was as calm and tranquil as ever, but Gu Chishao's interest had waned. Now that everyone was gone, there was no show to watch. He had to face the fact that not everyone had the right or the opportunity to quarrel with Long Fei. Only then did Long Fei have someone serve tea. Ning Nua and Grand Elder were silent. They couldn't figure out what Long Fei wanted to discuss with them. Long Fei did not waste time. He got straight to the point. The northern expedition will be postponed until 3 months from now. What do the two of you think? Ning Nua and Grand Elder were stunned. Ning Nua was no longer polite. He flew into a rage. Long Fei, what do you mean by this? Grand Elder shot a questioning look at Han Yunxi. Ning Cheng and Ning Jing were waiting for them to rescue them. If the northern expedition was postponed, then the rescue would be delayed as well. They had previously agreed to immediately rescue them and lead the northern expedition after spring. Why did they suddenly change their minds? It's snowing heavily this year. So far, there have been many snowstorms in northern Li. There's a danger of a snow disaster. Once a snow disaster breaks out, the weather will be the worst at the beginning of spring. If we act rashly, we'll be trapped in northern Li. The variables will be unpredictable. Long Fei's expression was cold and solemn. No one could tell what kind of mental torment he had gone through to make this decision. With today's weather and old man's many years of experience, it's impossible for a snow disaster to happen. Grand Elder immediately retorted. Even if there's no snow disaster, the snow will melt at the beginning of spring. First, the roads will be difficult to travel. Second, the spring chill will be chilly. The two of you should know how difficult it is to march. Han Yunxi spoke. Princess, my brother and Ning Jing's lives are at stake. The longer we delay, the more danger they will be in. Ning Nua angrily looked at the silent Tang Li and questioned, Tang Li, even if you're not worried about my sister, aren't you worried about your own flesh and blood? Are you still a man? In fact, his brother and sister-in-law didn't allow him to come today. It was he who insisted on coming. He was very calm and said seriously, the big picture is more important. I believe Ning Cheng and Jing won't be willing to take this risk. The weather was a big risk, but it wasn't the biggest one. The biggest risk was that Long Fei and Han Yunxi's dual cultivation failed. When it came to the weather, they could predict the worst possible outcome and prepare for it. However, no one knew the consequences of Long Fei and Han Yunxi's failed dual cultivation. If something were to happen to the two of them during the northern expedition, then the world would be in chaos without a leader. Of course, Tang Li wouldn't tell Ning Nua and the others about this risk. Bullshit. Ning Nua cursed. Tang Li was very calm and didn't answer. Grand Elder knew he couldn't persuade Long Fei. He looked at Han Yunxi and said, Princess Mu Ling is also in Jun Yixie's hands. Grand Elder tried to use Mu Ling to persuade Han Yunxi. Unfortunately, Han Yunxi persuaded him instead. She said. Chapter 1038. Han Yunxi said, Mu Ling is the little sister I dote on the most. I made this decision after careful consideration. Head Elder, this northern expedition is crucial to our success or failure. You should know that neither East Qin nor Western Qin can afford to take the risk. But before he could finish, Han Yunxi cut him off. Besides the safety of the hostages, if the D clan has no other reasons to convince me, then it's decided. Ning Cheng hadn't given any opinions on the timing of the northern expedition. It was Long Fei who suggested it in the beginning of spring, so the D clan was delighted to hear the news. But both Ning Nua and the head elder were clear that the best time to attack wasn't the beginning of spring, but the end of spring and the beginning of summer. First, Northern Li was located in the north of Cloud Realm continent, so its climate was cold. Generally speaking, it was still winter in northern Li after the central and southern regions entered spring. Thus, the beginning of summer was Cloud Realm continent's best season. The ice and snow had all melted away, so there wasn't as much rain as in the south. The temperature was just right, too. For the soldiers who had never fought in northern Li before, sending out troops at this time could avoid many of the effects caused by the unsuitable environment. Second, the end of spring and the beginning of summer was the time for grass to grow like crazy. June East's rear was in the south and east of northern Li. Once war broke out, the supply of food for the war horses would be affected. Third, June Xie and the Northern Dynasty's emperors were about to face off today. Once they did that, it would be a battle of attrition. Letting June Xie waste another 2 to 3 months before launching a surprise attack would save them a lot of trouble. Besides saving the hostages, Ning Nuo and the head elder couldn't come up with any other reasons, much less convince Han Yunxi. Long Fei Yi drank his tea in silence, while Han Yunxi waited patiently. Tang Li and Gu Beiwei were very quiet as well. Ning Nuo and the head elder had made all sorts of preparations before coming here, but never expected Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi to give them such an answer. They couldn't answer Han Yunxi, but they couldn't accept this fact. Perhaps, at this time, Han Yunxi could truly experience Long Fei Yi's cruelty. Seeing that Ning Nuo and First Elder didn't say anything for a long time, Han Yunxi said cruelly, "It's decided then. Everyone, rest well for the next few months and make sufficient preparations." The Great Elder shook his head. Ning Nuo muttered, "Princess, what if my brother and Ning Jing can't come back?" "It won't." Tang Li stood up. "It definitely won't." Ning Nuo sneered. "How can you guarantee that? On what basis?" Tang Li said coldly, "Then I guarantee it with my life. As long as Ning Jing is here, I'm here. If Ning Jing dies, I die." Ning Nuo was stunned. Before, he had suspected that Tang Li was sacrificing Ning Jing for East Qin's benefit, but now, he had nothing to say. "Tang Li, remember what you said today." Ning Nuo said and left in a huff. "Young Master Nuo. Young Master Nuo." The Great Elder hurriedly chased after him. "Young Master Nuo, how do we explain this to everyone?" Ning Nuo sneered. "No wonder Long Fei Yi wanted to drive everyone away. If the others were present, it would be strange if they didn't riot after hearing this news. Now that Long Fei had chased everyone away, it was just him and the head elder. It was easy to convince them otherwise. And they had to convince everyone in the D clan. Just say that it's the princess's order. Didn't my brother say that we'll listen to the princess? In the end, Ning Nuo pushed all the blame onto Han Yunxi. Other than this, he didn't know what else he could do. If the D clan didn't have the ability to save people, seeing Ning Nuo and the Great Elder come out, several elders and deputy generals hurried over. Just as they were about to ask, Ning Nuo said, "Let's go back and talk. Let's go." Everyone was very confused, but seeing Ning Nuo's bad expression, they didn't dare to ask anymore. Young Master Nuo always liked to smile. He must have encountered something big for his expression to change. Seeing the D clan leave, Long Fei Yi said lightly, "You and Tang Li will have to bear this bad reputation. Let them say what they want. I also have a guilty conscience, so it's their turn to say it." Han Yunxi smiled freely. Guilty conscience? Long Fei Yi was stunned at first, then he laughed loudly. What a good guilty conscience. Long Fei Yi had heard a lot of self-comforting words like, "let others say what they want," but this was the first time he heard of "let others say what they want" being so magnanimous and free. Who in this world could truly have a clear conscience? If one didn't have a guilty conscience, there would always be someone who had a guilty conscience. Even if one had a clear conscience to everyone, they would still have a guilty conscience to themselves. Instead of saying that one had a clear conscience, it was better to let others judge their honor and disgrace, and only know right and wrong. Gu Beiwa looked at Han Yunxi. Other than liking, there was more appreciation in his eyes. The princess's heart didn't lose to a man's at all. If she hadn't met Long Fei Yi, perhaps she would have been the empress of a generation. Because of Long Fei's strength and Han Yunqi's cruelty, what should have been a hostile negotiation became a matter that could be resolved with a few words. Of course, even if Ning Nuo and the Great Elder used the words the princess's order, it would still be difficult to convince the D clan. Who knew what kind of chaos would occur within the D clan? Han Yunqi and Long Fei couldn't care about these things. Han Yunqi just had to wait for this period of time to pass and for the D clan to stabilize. Then, she would have Ning Nuo send a letter to Tiger's prison to inform Ning Jing of their choice. When the time came, she would also have to let Bai Yuqiao take the risk and try to inform Ning Chung of the exact news. Seeing that the D clan's matter had come to an end, Su Donglin asked tentatively, "Your Highness, Princess, tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Should we give the order to make preparations?" Tomorrow was New Year's Eve. Han Yunqi clearly wanted to come back to accompany Gu Beiwei and Tang Li to celebrate the New Year. However, she had forgotten about it today. How busy must she be? No need to trouble yourself. Just have the kitchens prepare an overnight meal. Han Yunqi instructed. Tang Li wasn't in the mood to celebrate the New Year, so he needed someone to accompany him. Everyone gathered together to have a New Year's Eve dinner and chat. It was better than him missing his family on every festive day. Bailey Mingxiang listened silently from the side. That night, everyone was asleep, but she was busy alone in the kitchens. The next evening, Han Yunqi wanted to come to the kitchens to take a look at the dishes. Only then did she bump into Bailey Mingxiang and a few cooks discussing what soup to make. She didn't disturb anyone. She quietly stood to the side and watched. After a long while, she finally said, "Mingxiang." Bailey Mingxiang abruptly turned to look. She was very surprised. "Princess, don't hide in the kitchens tonight. Eat with everyone." Han Yunqi finished speaking and left. Bailey Mingxiang tightly pursed her lips. She didn't know what to do. Did this mean that the princess had forgiven her? Night fell. The purple Qi Pavilion in the deepest part of East Origin Palace was brightly lit. Su Donglin had found a large round table from somewhere that could seat 7 or 8 people. Currently, the table was filled with delicacies and fine wine. Every dish looked, smelled, and tasted good enough to make anyone drool. Han Yunqi dragged Long Fei to their seats early on. The two of them sat at the head of the table. Tang Li sat next to Long Fei, followed by Gu Beiwei. Gu was going to snatch the seat next to Han Yunqi, but Han Yunqi dragged Bailey Mingxiang to it first. Gu had no choice but to sit next to Bailey Mingxiang. In the past, Long Fei would attend a banquet at the palace on New Year's Eve in Tianning's capital city. But ever since Tianning's internal strife, Long Fei and Han Yunqi had been spending New Year's alone. But aside from the trip to Jiangnan's Plum Blossom Sea, everything else had been rushed. This year's New Year's Eve dinner was different from the palace banquet. It was less restrained and more casual. Still, Long Fei was as taciturn as ever. Besides picking up food for Han Yunqi, all he did was eat in silence. Everyone seemed to have considered Tang Li's feelings and was in no mood to celebrate. Even Gu was very quiet. After a while, Han Yunqi smiled and said, "Su Donglin, bring the things up." Everyone was wondering what Han Yunqi wanted to do when Su Donglin carried over a large copper tray filled with red packets. Han Yunqi and Su Donglin placed the items in the center of the tray and smiled. "Our money bags are giving everyone red packets. Come, come, come. Each person gets a packet. You're not allowed to snatch or take more. The banknotes inside are all different, so it depends on everyone's luck." As Han Yunqi spoke, she personally took a packet over. She held it in her hand and did not open it immediately. After Han Yunqi took it, she did not touch it. Everyone was waiting for Tang Li to take it. In terms of order, it was indeed Tang Li, the younger brother, who should take the red packet. Unfortunately, Tang Li just looked at it. He seemed to be in a daze and did not move. "Mingxiang, quick, take the red packet first,"
Han Yunqi said.
Bailey Mingxiang felt that it was inappropriate, but she knew that the princess would not let her go first for no reason. Thus, she stood up and carefully took a red packet. She bowed to Long Fei and said, "Thank you, Your Highness, for your reward. After Bailey Mingxiang took the red packet, Gu Beiwa also took one and thanked Long Feiyi. At this moment, everyone suddenly realized that there were still 4 red packets on the plate. Only Gu and Tang Li were left. Han Yunxi had already distributed the red packets for Su Donglin and the other servants on Long Feiyi's behalf. Why were there 4 red packets? A complicated look flashed past Gu's eyes. In the end, he stood up and took one. He was quite gentlemanly. Although he did not bow to express his gratitude like Gu Beiwa and Bailey Mingxiang, he waved the red packet at Long Feiyi and said, "Thank you." Now, there were only 3 red packets left on the plate. Everyone was puzzled. Han Yunxi reminded him, "Tang Li, your brother is giving out red packets." Tang Li smiled. Everyone could see that he was reluctant. He took one. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi said, "You heartless thing. Don't you know how to get one for Ning Jing too? If I see her later, I'll complain." Tang Li was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled. This time, he smiled a little helplessly, but he did not force it. He immediately took another red packet. However, Han Yunxi immediately scolded him again. "You're unteachable." Tang Li was stunned. He did not understand why his sister-in-law scolded him. Bailey Mingxiang smiled and said, "Princess, it's sect leader Tang's first time being a father. He's still not used to it. You can't blame him." Bailey Mingxiang had already said this, but Tang Li still did not understand. Long Feiyi, who had been silent all this time, finally said, "It's for your child."
Take it.
Tang Li finally understood. His brother and sister-in-law had not only prepared a red packet for the new year for Ning Jing, but also for the child in her womb. Chapter 1039. Tang Li slapped his forehead and hurriedly took the last red packet. He bowed to Long Feiyi and said, "Brother, sister-in-law, I thank you on behalf of Ning Jing and the child." "Sect Master Tang, this is for the child." Bailey Mingxiang stood up and handed over the red packet she had just received. This was the first time she had received a red packet from His Highness. Gu Beiwa also stood up and handed over the red packet. He smiled and said, "Sect Master Tang, this humble one will also present a gift to Buddha and help the child gain some wealth." Gu opened the red packet and glanced at the number. There was a hint of shock in his eyes, but he quickly handed over the red packet. "Tang Li, here you go. Later, let Ning Jing give birth to a dozen for you. You'll be richer than your brother in no time." Tang Li could not help but laugh loudly. "That's a good idea. It's a good idea." The atmosphere of the night's dinner became lively because of the plate of red packets. Tang Li was no longer in a daze. He put away the red packet and stood up to raise his glass. "Brother, here's to you." Long Feiyi rarely drank. Tonight, he made an exception and drank 3 large glasses of wine with Tang Li. Tang Li poured another glass to toast everyone, but Gu stopped him. "You're already a father. How can you be so insincere?" Tang Li was also straightforward. "Okay, then we'll start with you. Come." Just like that, Tang Li drank 3 large glasses of wine with Gu. Then, he drank 3 large glasses of wine with Gu Beiwa. As for Han Yunxi and Bailey Mingxiang, they used soup and tea in place of wine. Tang Li's drinking spirit was aroused. Gu sat beside him and pulled him to play a finger-guessing game. It was obvious that he wanted to get him drunk. Compared to going back to drink alone and getting himself drunk, it was better to have someone drink with him. In the beginning, Gu and Tang Li were still playing the finger-guessing game normally. Later on, for some reason, they started a drinking contest. Neither of them was willing to back down. In a short while, wine jars were smashed all over the floor. Everyone watched from the side. No one interrupted them. They just let Tang Li vent and go crazy. In the end, Tang Li lay on the table, completely drunk and unconscious. Long Feiyi said indifferently, "Su Donglin, take him back to his room and take good care of him." Once he was drunk, he could temporarily forget everything and have a good sleep. How could everything in the world go according to one's wishes? Sometimes, hiding wasn't a sign of cowardice. Instead, it was to adjust oneself to accept reality and do one's best. Tang Li was a good-for-nothing since he was a child. He started drinking very early on, so his alcohol tolerance was naturally very good. Unexpectedly, Gu's alcohol tolerance was far better than his. After Tang Li was sent away, Gu still acted as if he had never drunk before. He didn't have any reaction at all. Han Yunxi was very suspicious. In her impression, this guy had drunk with Long Fei Yi once. According to the shadow guard at that time, his alcohol tolerance wasn't that good. Could it be that he practiced it again later? After Tang Li left, Gu stretched lazily and looked at Long Fei Yi. Let's have a round? Almost even Han Yunxi thought that Long Fei Yi would refuse, but Long Fei Yi actually nodded in agreement. Han Yunxi had seen Long Fei Yi drink before, but other than that time with Ning Cheng, she had never seen Long Fei Yi compete with anyone in drinking. Long Fei Yi nodded, and Su Donglin quickly came over to pour wine into a full bowl. Unexpectedly, Gu brought over a jar of wine. Long Fei Yi, don't you think the bowl is too small? Long Fei Yi said, don't you feel uncomfortable after drinking so much? Are you scared? Gu laughed. In a competition between men, other than martial arts, there was another way, and that was alcohol. He had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Su Donglin, get a bottle of jade wine, Long Fei Yi said. Jade wine? This was a wine that only existed in legends. It was rumored that this was the immortal of wine, and there were only 2 bottles in the world. This wine was very strong. Even people with high alcohol tolerance would be drunk after 1 glass, drunk after 2 glasses, and passed out after 3 glasses. And people with low alcohol tolerance would be able to sleep for 3 days and 3 nights with just a small sip. Using jade wine for a drinking competition, there was no need to drink too much as it would make one's stomach uncomfortable. A few sips were enough to determine the winner. Other than this good wine, using other types of wine for a drinking competition was no different from using water in Long Fei Yi's eyes. In the end, it was just a competition of whose stomach was bigger and could hold more. Han Yunxi was surprised, to say nothing of Gu Qishao. Long Fei Yi, a tea addict, actually hid the best wine in the world. And from what he said, it seemed that there was more than 1 bottle. Gu naturally understood the strength of jade wine. He twitched the corner of his mouth and felt a little regretful. He thought that Long Fei Yi, a tea addict, didn't have any strong wine. If he didn't have strong wine, he wouldn't be able to sleep no matter how much he drank. He calculated that even if he lost to Long Fei Yi, it wouldn't be shameful. After all, he and Tang Li had already drunk so much. If he won against Long Fei Yi, then tonight would be Long Fei Yi's humiliation. How would he know that Long Fei Yi had such good things? If they didn't start from the same starting point, he would definitely lose when competing with this kind of strong wine. Su Donglin took the jade wine and opened it. The wine's fragrance wafted out. Even Han Yunxi and Bailey Mingxiang, 2 people who didn't like wine, felt that the smell was very good. Long Fei Yi was very elegant when drinking tea, and it was the same when it came to drinking. Even if it was a drinking competition, such good wine shouldn't be wasted. He ordered Su Donglin to bring over a special jade wine cup and filled 2 cups to the brim. Gu stared at the large cup full of wine. The corner of his mouth twitched. He wanted to say something a few times, but he held back. Long Fei Yi stood up. Gu thought that he was going to pass him a cup, but he raised a cup instead. This cup will offset your previous cups. How about it? This guy, Gu Beiwei and Han Yunxi couldn't help but laugh. Long Fei Yi's way of doing things showed that he was determined to win against Gu. Moreover, he wanted to win over him wholeheartedly without any excuses. What they drank today was 10-year-old New or Hong. Although Gu drank more than 10 jars, it still couldn't compare to a cup of jade wine. Long Fei Yi didn't take advantage of him in any way. Long Fei Yi didn't care whether Gu agreed or not. He raised the wine cup, and without touching his lips, he poured the entire cup of wine into his mouth with a handsome and powerful movement. He drank it all cleanly. Everyone looked at him and waited for a moment, but he didn't react at all. If they hadn't seen him drink the large cup of jade wine with their own eyes, no one would have known that he drank. He put down the cup, and Su Donglin quickly filled the empty cup. Both cups were full, and there was no difference in the amount. Long Fei Yi was still very fair. He coldly said to Gu, "Choose a cup." Gu Qixiao's eyes darted back and forth before everyone's eyes. He raised his wine cup and said loudly, "Come,
Drink.
before he could drink, Long Fei raised his other cup and took a sip from the bottom of his shoulder. Even if Gu wanted to go back on his word, there was no room for regret. He threw caution to the wind and raised his cup to finish it. He drank so much just now, and he was really full. After drinking this cup of wine, he immediately burped. Everyone looked at him. He didn't seem to be affected, and he could still laugh. However, as he laughed, his eyes suddenly widened, and he fell head first onto the dining table. He fainted. Long Fei Yi was expressionless. He ordered coldly Su Donglin, "Drag him away." This New Year's Eve dinner was the most unforgettable meal in Tang Li's life, and it was also the most unforgettable meal in Gu's life. Gu slept for 3 days and 3 nights. When he woke up, he didn't mention a word about his loss. He told Gu Beiwei that he really wanted to get Ningqing out right now and let Ningqing fight with Long Fei Yi. Just like that, the New Year passed. After all, no one was in the mood to celebrate, nor did they have the time. New Year's Eve at Tiger's Prison was very boring as well. On New Year's Eve and the first day of the year, Mu Ling stayed in her room to keep Ningjing company. Bai Yuqiao secretly hid outside the courtyard and accompanied Su Xiuyu for an entire night. Before he left a red envelope on the wall. Uncle Chung was the same as before, hiding in his room all day. Deacon Jean snuck into the back courtyard a few times, but didn't run into Mu Ling or at all. In the end, he returned in disappointment. After the 3rd day of the new year, there wasn't much of a New Year's mood. Yunxi and Long Fei Yi didn't relax because of the delay, but busied themselves with their own tasks. Long Fei Yi had to keep an eye on Northern Li's civil war and track down Bai Yanqing's whereabouts. He also had to keep an eye on that mysterious figure from the poison sect. Moreover, the Heaven and Earth Bank's year-end accounts had already been in his hands for a month, but he still hadn't had time to go through them all. Bai Yanqing still hadn't shown his face, much less made any movements. It'd be strange if there wasn't a ghost. The mysterious black-robed man from the poison sect hadn't shown up either. These were the 2 things that worried Long Fei Yi the most. As for Han Yunxi, she spent most of her time outside of cultivating the poison storage space with Gu Beiwei and Gu. She studied their ancient poison scriptures, pill manuals, and strange anecdotes in search of the earthly fire Kun furnace. Tang Li was especially well-behaved and hung out with Gu Beiwei every day, reading the poison scriptures with him and occasionally asking for medical advice. Today, Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi were chatting in their rooms when they heard a scream from outside. Tang Li. Long Fei Yi rose to his feet. That voice really was Tang Li's. What's wrong with him? Han Yunxi was also anxious. The 2 of them hurried over to the source of the sound and heard Tang Li shouting a few times along the way. Tang Li had been perfectly fine for the past few days.
Just what had happened to him?
Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi's hearts were in their throats. But when they found Tang Li, they saw Tang Li hugging a thick poison scripture and jumping up and down while shouting. Gu and Gu Beiwei rushed over at the same time and were stunned by the scene. Tang Li, what are you doing? Long Fei Yi asked coldly. Although he doted on his younger brother, he rarely showed it. Tang Li turned around and laughed. Big bro, the earthly fire Kun furnace. The earthly fire Kun furnace. I found it. As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked. Gu was the first to rush over and snatch the poison scripture from Tang Li's hands. He looked at it carefully and was overjoyed. It's actually there. Where is it? Han Yunxi asked anxiously.
Guess.
Tang Li said with a smile. Han Yunxi could not guess it. She said anxiously, "Tell me quickly. Why would I look for it if I could guess it?" Big bro, guess. Tang Li said again. Long Fei Yi did not have Han Yunxi's patience. He reached out and grabbed the poison scripture from Gu's hands. After reading the records on the middle page, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were surprised. This location was 2MO. Actually, I fixed the wrong words. Chapter 1040. The place that Tang Li had found was none other than his hometown, the Tang sect. Han Yunxi and the others were very surprised by this location. Who would have thought that the thing that they had been searching for so long would actually be in their own territory? Tang Li, in particular, was overjoyed. As long as it was something that belonged to his family, then it would belong to his brother and sister-in-law. Rather than saying that it was a surprise, it would be better to say that it was a pleasant surprise. Han Yunxi had previously been rather worried that the earthly fire Kuan furnace would fall into the hands of a weirdo like the old man of alchemy, just like the celestial fire furnace. If they wanted to obtain it, they would have to go through a lot of trouble. If the earthly fire Kuan furnace was in the Tang sect, they would be able to find it even if they dug 3 feet into the ground, and no one would dare to stop them. The Poison Codex did not clearly record the location of the earthly fire furnace, but from the description, it was definitely the ghost fire in the earthly fire Kuan furnace. The Poison Codex said that in the Lotus Mountain range, there was a spring called the Fire Spring. There was no fire in the Fire Spring, but because the water was fiery red, when the wind blew and the waves rose, it looked like there was a raging fire in the spring from afar. Thus, it was named the Fire Spring. The water in the Fire Spring was boiling hot, and not a single blade of grass grew around the spring. Occasionally, birds and beasts would fall into the spring and die immediately, their corpses turning black. When someone who was proficient in poison came to this spring and determined that the spring water was poisonous, they did not know why it was poisonous. Celestial fire had no form and only had heat. Earth fire was definitely the same. When birds and beasts were burned to death and their corpses turned black, it was very likely that they had been poisoned. This Poison Codex recorded something that happened several hundred years ago. It was already very impressive that the poison masters at that time could determine that the spring water was poisonous. Tang Li, have you seen this fire spring before? Han Yunxi asked anxiously. Tang Li shook his head and said, the Tang sect's poison grounds have always been managed by Aunt Ru. It's a forbidden area of the Tang sect. I've only been there once. Han Yunxi wanted to ask Long Fei Yi more, but she realized that there were hundreds of questions. If Long Fei Yi and Tang Li knew about the existence of the fire spring, they would have thought of the earthly fire Kuan furnace. Aunt Ru and the others did not know about the earth fire Qian furnace, so it was normal that they did not tell them. Han Yunxi didn't care how much Aunt Ru knew about the fire spring. Right now, they had to hurry over and find the fire of 10,000 poisons. The best way was to get it safely in the bag. Sister-in-law, so the earth fire belongs to us. I'll go with you. As long as it belongs to the Tang sect, it can't escape. Tang Li was very excited. He had been the sect master of the Tang sect for so long, but this was the first time he had the boldness of a sect master. Good. Pack up, we'll set out tonight. Han Yunxi agreed immediately. Tang Li indeed needed to leave the three-way black market for a walk, so as to avoid being bored to death. Your Highness, Princess, it's been snowing heavily lately. I'm afraid we won't be able to reach Mount Tianshan in less than a month, Gu Beiwe said seriously. Now that we've found the fire of 10,000 poisons, we should prepare to go to Mount Tianshan. The Tang sect was in the southeast, which was quite far from the three-way black market. Mount Tianshan was in the northwest, which was also quite far from the Tang sect. Taking into account the distance, 2 to 3 months wasn't a lot of time for them. Moreover, they had to return to the three-way black market half a month in advance. Once they left, time would pass very quickly. Before Han Yunxi could reply, Tang Li beat her to it. Then we'll be able to save them very soon. Everyone was gratified to see Tang Li so optimistic. Their efforts on New Year's Eve hadn't been in vain. Su Donglin sent a message to Tang Zijin first. Ask him about the fire spring. Long Fei Yi ordered in a low voice. Based on the time recorded in the ancient Poison Codex, the fire spring had already existed before the Tang sect had taken over Lotus Flower Mountain Range. The Tang sect had originally been skilled in hidden weapons and poison. Poison had been passed down from the Poison sect. Later on, poison had declined, so the Tang sect had mainly relied on hidden weapons. The Poison Lands only occupied 2 mountains in the Tang sect and were considered forbidden grounds. Later on, Tang Zijin opened a new foundry and occupied one of the mountains in the Poison Lands, leaving only one mountain in the Poison Lands. According to the ancient Poison Codex, the location of the fire spring was in that mountain. The Tang sect's Poison Lands only existed in name. All these years, Aunt Ru had been in charge of it, in charge of searching for the secrets of the perplexing butterfly illusion. Long Fei Yi wasn't familiar with poison, so he'd left these matters to Aunt Ru. Thus, he and Tang Li had rarely set foot in the Poison Lands, so they didn't know that the fire spring existed. Before they left, Han Yunxi sent someone to bid farewell to Ning Noa, reminding him to remember to inform Ning Jing and Ning Cheng of the delay in the northern expedition. That night, the group secretly left East Origin Hall and hurried towards the Tang sect. Tang Li and Gu led the way in front, while Su Donglin brought a few shadow guards to clear the snow along the way. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi rode in the carriage in front, while Bailey Mingxiang followed behind. As usual, Gu Beiwei didn't travel with them. Someone had to stay in the three-way black market to observe the movements of the D clan and Northern Li, and report to Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi at any time. Furthermore, if they encountered an unexpected emergency, they had to have the ability and courage to handle it themselves. Without a doubt, Gu Beiwei was the best candidate. Just as Gu Beiwei predicted, Han Yunxi and the others took almost a month to travel from the three-way black market to the Tang sect. When they arrived, it was already the end of the first month. The north was still covered in ice and snow, especially in Northern Li, but the south was already filled with the smell of spring. The spring water in the mountains was clear and cool, and large groups of tadpoles were swimming around. The ground was full of tender grass, and there were also colorful and unknown wildflowers. Along the way, Han Yunxi carefully paid attention to her own pulse. Unfortunately, one day, her good friend suddenly came to visit, and she was so disappointed that her whole body turned cold. Perhaps she was really too tired during this period of time. Her qi and blood weren't very good, and her pulse wasn't as good as it was when she was in the army. Thinking about the pile of things she was about to face, Han Yunxi could only give up. If Long Fei Yi knew about her current physical condition, Zhao Mama would probably be summoned again, and many things would be slowed down. Han Yunxi told herself that after a few months of hard work, everything would get better. Everyone would get better. Before they reached Crouching Dragon Peak, the main peak of the Tang sect, Han Yunxi took a deep breath to temporarily forget her worries. As soon as they arrived at Crouching Dragon Peak, they saw Tang Zijin, Madame Tang, and Aunt Ru waiting at the gate. When she saw her precious son return, Madame Tang immediately rushed over and pulled Tang Li into her arms. They all knew that the northern expedition had been delayed. Madame Tang didn't mention this sad matter. She just hugged her precious son tightly and felt proud of him. Even Tang Zijin, who had always thought that Tang Li was a good-for-nothing, had a whole new level of respect for Tang Li this time. Of course, he wasn't as impudent as Madame Tang. He walked over with Aunt Ru and bowed to Long Fei Yi. "Your Highness, you've had a hard journey." Tang Zijin had already been warned by Long Fei Yi in the army. However, due to the difference in status, he didn't dare try to lecture him as an elder. Long Fei Yi didn't say anything for a long time. Tang Zijin knew what was going on. He said, "Princess, you've had a hard journey." Long Fei Yi raised a hand to indicate that he could rise. When she saw Tang Zijin look over, Han Yunxi smiled. She was magnanimous and didn't deliberately make things difficult for him. Su Donglin had already told her everything that Tang Zijin and Aunt Ru had done behind her back. If she really held a grudge, Tang Zijin probably wouldn't even have had the chance to bow to her. Subduing a person was also a way to take revenge. After the misunderstanding between Eastern and Western Qin was resolved, Tang Zijin couldn't find fault with her status anymore. Apart from her status as the princess of Western Qin, she didn't think there was anything else that could make Tang Zijin, her uncle, dislike her. Tang Zijin was indeed convinced. No matter how Eastern and Western Qin recovered in the future, whether they remained separate or merged as one, Han Yunxi's status would be very noble. She would either be the Empress of Western Qin or the Empress of the Great Qin Empire. In order to consolidate the Tang sect's future status, not only could the Tang sect not offend Han Yunxi, they also had to maintain a good relationship with her. A trace of disdain flitted across Aunt Ru's eyes, but she still bowed to Han Yunxi with Tang Zijin. Princess, you've had a hard journey. Although the misunderstanding between Eastern and Western Qin had been resolved, her resentment towards Han Yunxi only increased. If it weren't for that brat Han Yunxi, she wouldn't have been imprisoned on Crouching Dragon Peak right now. Aunt Ru wasn't Tang Zijin. She was already a prisoner in the Tang sect. She didn't have to think about the future of the Tang sect. She only felt that her fate was unfair. This was a rare opportunity that she had been waiting for. She had to teach Han Yunxi a lesson. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to dispel the resentment in her heart. Long Feiyi was about to speak, but Han Yunxi beat him to it. She said coldly to Aunt Ru, "There's no need to be so polite. You may rise." Han Yunxi cared about the big picture and gave face to Long Feiyi and Tang Li. However, that didn't mean that she was easy to bully and didn't hold a grudge. She could maintain a good relationship with Tang Zijin. As for people like Aunt Ru, she said to herself, forget it. The fact that Aunt Ru had colluded with Duan Muyao back then was enough to prove that she wasn't just stupid.
She also didn't have a bottom line.
If she wasn't imprisoned on Crouching Dragon Peak, who knew when she would bring disaster to the Tang sect? Aunt Ru raised her head and looked at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi pretended not to see her. Long Feiyi naturally wouldn't allow Aunt Ru to rise again. Thus, if Aunt Ru didn't accept Han Yunxi's command, she would have to continue curtsying. Hatred flashed across Aunt Ru's eyes, but she still smiled and stood up. Thank you, Princess. Your Highness, the poison grounds have always been under Aunt Ru's jurisdiction. This subordinate wasn't familiar with the area, so I took Aunt Ru away from Crouching Dragon Peak without permission. I haven't redeemed myself yet, Tang Zijin said. There's no need to be so formal here, Long Feiyi said calmly. He turned to Madame Tang and asked, Aunt, how have you been? With Long Feiyi's words, Tang Zijin relaxed. Under the current circumstances, he had to follow Long Feiyi's wishes. Otherwise, the Bailey army's power would surpass the Tang clans in the future. Very good. As for the two of you, you're always rushing about. Don't you know how to take care of your health? Madame Tang pulled Han Yunxi over and studied her closely. Han Yunxi quickly diverted her attention by handing over a small brocade box. Madame Tang, this is... What? Fei's already calling me aunt, but you're still not willing? It looks like I'll have to make up for it with a big bow. Madame Tang said unhappily. Han Yunxi smiled helplessly. She glanced at Long Feiyi and changed her tune. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.